talking. Afterwards, though, we could do the
Sure. Post
um,
game.
post game. Oh, right, I forgot. I was gonna do my little solo intro and then add you in very dramatically. But here we are, already talking.
Okay. Hey.
Um,
So this is happening now. We're on.
it's happening. We
Holy
are on. We
shit.
are live.
Can I swear? Is that cool? I mean, it's YouTube,
You
right?
can, yeah, you can definitely swear. I'm trying to cut down on
Sure.
swearing.
Just
Just
in
not,
case.
no, not for a family thing, but just because it's. I think swearing has become this very normie like thing, and I'm trying to uproot it, excise it, because I
Mhm.
feel like it lends a certain gravitas if you like don't,
Yeah.
if you don't curse. But we both will, because I can't. I'm not succeeding at taking it out. I just.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a teaching job, kind of, thank God, but I do teach quite a bit. Like I visit places, and you can't just, if you want to swear like for dramatic effect, you can do it, but I try not to.
Yeah.
Just like, why, come on.
Yeah. I've just accepted that teaching work that I do, and even professional work, is going to be somewhat compromised.
Yeah.
Opportunities might,
Yeah.
by just stuff that I say. You got to keep it with,
Yeah.
always weighing this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah. So okay. So yeah. Before we start even talking and stuff, everybody, welcome to the Last Things live stream. First announcement, though, there's the classic sort of like and subscribe on the YouTube thing. But if you're listening in the podcast version and on the YouTube version, the Last Things Patreon exists now. I would invite everyone to hop on board. I'm going to do this whether or not I have income coming in, obviously, because I love it. But I'm going to offer all these cool extra exclusive things, exclusive videos, guitar tutorials. Some of the more educational type stuff is going to be like bonuses for the patrons. So there's all of that. And yeah, it's just going to allow this to really flourish on the level that it should. So yeah, there'll be a link down below to subscribe to the Patreon. So yeah, words. So we got Peter Evans here.
Hey.
Yeah, man. Thank you a ton.
Thanks for having me.
For coming on.
Yeah.
If you're anywhere near experimental music, you don't need any Peter doesn't need any introduction. If you're not anywhere near experimental music, you might actually. Peter is basically, and this is, I know, so I'm gonna be on your nuts and stuff, but he's really one of the top, like, foremost, like, musicians on the trumpet, period. Like, now, like, actually, really recognized as an innovator globally, and probably historically in the future. So in any case, yeah, I mean, but we're going to be talking about, Peter's compositional work as well. He's got a new record that I definitely want to get into, and then a record from a couple of years ago I want to get into. But yeah, man, starting it off though, what's going on, dude? What's new?
Yeah. I went to a cigar bar last night with my wife's cousin. I'd never been to a place like that before. I mean, I always thought I would like it, and it was heaven on earth. It was
hell yeah, dude.
It was amazing. Club Macunado in East Side of Manhattan. It was
Macunado.
Yeah, it was really. I didn't know a place like that even still existed, but it was really something else. So
yeah. That's the name of a type of cigar, right? Macunado.
I guess so. I mean, the cigars. Then the cigars have these ridiculous names like Churchill. I got the Rothschild. I just thought it was fun.
Oh, dude, it's such Chad shit, man. Every cigar, it's just crazy. Dicks. It's just dicks.
It was a weird scene for sure. Yeah. It wasn't just Chad's, but there was definitely some of that going on. I mean, next to us was just a guy on the couch that there was a big couch, a guy in this suit that looked like it was from Target, and sitting there by himself, just doing his thing. I mean, just having a scotch and smoking a cigar. They have TVs, you can watch sports a little. It's not super fancy. You can watch some sports,
Yeah. No, I think that's even more. Even more macho when it's like kind of like budget, when it's like not the full. I don't know. It's like Macunado. I don't know anything about cigars, but I remember in Sopranos season 2 when those two douchebag intern dudes are like working at the card game. He's like, Tone, I got the Macanudos.
The Macanudos.
I don't know if that he's mispronouncing it, but
yeah.
That's sick. Yeah, man.
But that's what happened. That's my most recent adventure, I guess. But
yeah. You're back in New York now, right? I thought you were still in Lisbon, but
so it was crazy stuff. I mean, I moved there I guess soon after that gig you saw at Sunview in fall of 18. and then came back in fall of 20. Like,
Oh, word. All right.
yeah, and so it's been two years back here. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Lisbon was all right, but not really the vibe to.
Lisbon was cool. I mean, it was cool at first. I mean, I just gotten married, and like
Oh,
both.
congratulations! I didn't know that.
Well, we got married, and then we moved to Lisbon together. So it's kind of a
Okay.
wild adventure thing. She wanted to kind of do something different. She'd been in New York for a while too, my wife. So we went there and like took it pretty seriously. We're like, let's actually try to do it and like move there.
Yeah.
And then I had work set up for, like most musicians, like a lot of stuff anything that's good gets set up kind of far in advance. So I already had kind of a schedule for 2019, including like some Europe stuff and stuff also in the States. So I was kind of like fulfilling my schedule that I had planned before even knowing that I was going to be in Lisbon,
Word.
like during that year. And it was really fun. It was really fun to be there and like to be able to go back and forth more easily to other places and come back. And normal difficult things about moving to another country and like figuring out how that goes, especially I think when you do it in your life and why probably has a huge impact on your experience, So I moved there like I had like kind of a career. I knew people there. Like I had visited there a bunch and played like some nice gigs and stuff already. So it wasn't like moving to some place and not knowing anybody.
Yeah.
And it was very cool. I mean, the thing that I think was the most fun thing that I did when I was there was like I was just trying to find a way to like it was a bit of a delicate thing to like to move to a place like that and try to maintain like whatever career thing that I had built moving in, but also not be involved with anything that's going on, because that's something that people do. Like they'll move to some place and just not play with anybody, not do anything.
Well, that's what I did, man. I moved out to LA and I just kind of like the only stuff I'd been doing is like tours and like long distance stuff in New York, which is, I don't know.
I can understand. I mean, I don't know. So in Lisbon, like there's this place called ZDB, Zedibois Gallery. It's like think of it as like, I don't know what the New York equivalent would be. Maybe like Silent Barn meets Roulette.
Tight.
Project room kind of vibe.
Beautiful.
Kind of like it's an art gallery that then turned into like a bar, and they have like multiple performance spaces and stuff. They do a lot of stuff. They have a bookstore. So I did like this. I started like an experimental music school there that was all word of mouth, just like to meet some young people and
Hell
kind of like
just in a couple of years, huh? Yeah.
What's up?
Just in a couple of years, just being there for like a year and a half, right?
I think I started it like maybe 6 months in, and then we did it every 2 months. So I think I did like 5 or 6 of them in the time that I was there. And it was really interesting and really fun. I learned a lot, met a lot of cool the young people there are awesome. They're like really cool. They're into all kinds of different stuff and have a very like, just have a lot of perspective on stuff. So that was totally really cool. And then, so I was there when COVID went down.
That's gotta be weird, man.
It was super weird. Yeah. And the city, I mean, at first it wasn't really that bad there. So, but also it was like weird because, the government's like, just don't go inside your apartment and never come out. It was like, and all the tourists left. So it was like super empty. And I don't know if you've been to Lisbon, but it's like this.
I have not, actually. I never played Portugal. Yeah, I played Spain, but I never got all the way down there. Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, imagine like it has all this old colonial stuff that's like falling apart a little bit and mixed in with like new hotels and like kind of hipstery stuff. So it's kind of like a dilapidated but palm tree tropical vibe. And then it was totally empty, which was really interesting.
Yeah. Bizarre,
because all the tourists, left and stuff. So I had some friends there. We'd hang out a little bit, and I got a lot of work done. And the Being and Becoming record was out, so I was able to kind of like, or it was done, so I was able to kind of work on that and get it out. Then the reason I left actually was like in the late summer, my mom got sick, and it was like kind of thing where it's like I have to get my ass back to the States like right away. So
yeah, man.
So we came back, and then she ended up passing away, and then we just never went back.
Oh Jesus, man! Condolences. I had no idea, man. I had no idea.
That was rough. So that was a crazy period. So I mean, they had the fact that it happened during COVID also. Just like everything, I just put a wrench into everything, like the travel stuff, the medical stuff, like any kind of interpersonal thing. It like exacerbated a lot of stuff. So, it wasn't the kind of thing where we could just go back and forth. It was like once we pulled the trigger, it was like that's kind of it. Like we're not going to be able to go back to Portugal.
Right. Right.
So it was a really difficult time, and then we were we came to New York, and just to kind of like clear our heads and stuff. And I remember driving in this rental car, like under the BQE, there's like crazy traffic, there's like some weed deliverer, like darting between the cars. And I was like, I got to move back here. I love this place.
Oh,
and
dude. Yeah. I mean,
and then that was it. So we then decided to move back to, I'm in Brooklyn now.
Oh, sick, dude. Good. So we'll get to Hangman because I'm moving in April, like in less than a month.
Right. Amazing.
I'm moving back, dude, which is like, well, see, now I'm like trashing LA less at the very end because I'm like, oh, I didn't really take advantage of this and that.
Why did you move there?
For my lady, because we were doing my girl and I were doing long distance, like bi-coastal, which is like basically not a sustainable thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I'm thinking I want to go back to school. And I'm like, you know what? Move out there.
Yeah.
See what's what. If it's not cool, we'll move back to New York together. So yeah, she finished school. It's all right. It was kind of a good place to do lockdown, actually. Mm-hmm. Just the house that we have is just like super sick, Yeah. So it won't be like that in New York. But yeah, man.
LA is interesting. I mean, I think I always tell people LA is more foreign to me than most foreign countries that I go to.
Yeah.
It's so weird. I love it. I love visiting. I mean, it's a crazy place.
Yeah. Well, dude, it's so weird to just move someplace in your late 30s and stuff. It's just like a very particular, because it's like you don't show up and you're just like, so what's everyone doing this weekend? It's like having kids. That's what people are doing. Like it's not.
Their lives are already kind of going.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, I made a few new friends, but I didn't do any projects here at all, which is, I mean, it's not like the darkest thing, but I was like, I revived Extra Life while here. That was all long distance. We recorded in New York, the drummer's in Belgium. We did this Europe tour in January that went awesome. So other than that, in LA, I just did this YouTube channel. I mean, that's like just getting this whole thing off the ground,
Yeah.
So I've been like just internet guy.
Internet. So that's kind of what spurred this, was the combination of LA, COVID,
Well, it was actually I started this right before COVID. Like I started it in like January of 2020. I just had this feeling. I'm like, man, I need to get my thoughts together. I got to gather. I have to create a like a little bubble of meaning making, sense making
for yourself.
For myself, but assuming that that's going to be helpful for other people. You know what I mean? Or I mean, helpful is the right word, but entertaining at the very least.
Yeah.
Is this? That's got to be Nondor, right?
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. That's Nondor.
It's funny, man. So I did this workshop I was in LA in October, and I cooked up a little trip for myself, and I did this workshop at UCLA, and we were talking about like not being risque or being honest with students or whatever. Yeah. It's like a big maybe 100 people there, something like that. Super cool kids. And someone asked some question about like career stuff. And I was sort of like, well, I'm not really the right person to ask. I'm like, I've been out of the school thing for so long. Like whatever I say is probably not gonna be that relevant. And I made a joke. I was like, you have people that are like crawling around on OnlyFans, like acting like dogs, like making money. Like
right.
That's like a thing that people are doing to make money. Like I have no idea like how people and people kind of laughed like too hard. And I thought maybe I was like tee-hee-hee, or maybe I said something wrong. So we went out with some of the students later, like for pizza and beers and stuff, faculty and students. And I was like, hey, so what was up with that? How come people reacted in that way? And these 20-year-old guys were like, no, man, we reacted that way because that's right. I mean, that is the way people make money here. That's just what it is. Like rent out a house, and like a bunch of guys will rent out a house and have people come in and film content all day.
Yeah.
And you get a few $100. And it's like, that's a normal part of like, I guess.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm not going to go off too hard, but it's supposed to be sex positive. You're supposed to think that that's empowering to women. It's not. It's totally degenerate. I completely judge. Not the people doing it, not the people. But I judge that that's normalized. It should not be. If my daughter were doing that, I would fucking hit the roof. I don't have a daughter. It's not my business.
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to shut up.
No, it's fine.
It's like
part of the podcast thing is like, part of the reason I like your thing is that it's not every single episode is not people weighing in on the current events of the day.
I'm glad it's not, because I feel like I do that a lot.
Well, the problem is that current events are so insane, and what's going on, you can't. I mean, it's almost like when people say you can't be non-political, which can be kind of annoying. If you like just broaden that out a little bit, like you can't talk about art and music and not talk about like there's people that are just like literally opening up their assholes to the camera just to get a little bit of attention and love,
Uh-huh.
and that's
Yeah.
like part of the cultural moment that we're in.
Yeah.
We're trying to be artists in that. I mean, we can't not talk about it,
Yeah,
We're not
man.
recognize that that's part of the larger environment, I think.
It is, man. It is. But I think I don't know, doing I like to move in and out of I like to talk about music in a non-political,
Sure. Oh yeah,
like in and out of
yeah.
plugging it in, because I do think it should also be able to be cloistered, like just the what was it? I saw somebody talking on Twitter. They were like, what were they fucking talking about? They were like people are decrying the end of the humanities, because they were like, people need to stop freaking out about the end of the humanities because they're mad that everything's politicized. And they were like, we need to move away from the Eurocentric truth and beauty model.
Okay.
And I was like, look, man, I don't have a ton of like specific opinions on what's going on in the humanities, especially decolonial, et cetera, et cetera. I'm pretty open to everything, but like truth and beauty, like I don't even think that's Eurocentric. If it is either way, I'm like, I'm doing truth and beauty here.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
I'm sorry. It's like I'm doing it. Like, you know what I mean?
I'm 100% with you. I think this is just like about the logistics of this thing. Looking at myself on StreamYard is like really distracting to me. Is there a way that I can do it so it's just you or something, or I just blow up
the thing is, I'm the guy that controls the screen.
All right, I think I got it. I just blew up the whole thing and then moved you over, so it's just you on my screen now.
Oh, okay, good. So then I'll have the two things, because we need your well, yeah, we want your face on this.
I'm here, yeah. I'm not looking like right at myself. It's like really
excellent.
Weird. I'm not used to that yet.
Good. You don't get used to it. The level of narcissism that it requires, like this is, yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, man. You're gonna have to like steer me a little bit, because I tend to bounce around like way too fast sometimes
with topics and stuff.
Point. Yeah, so it's like the truth and beauty thing. It's like, I don't know. I start to feel sometimes like there's this kind of thing that musicians say to themselves or amongst themselves, that maybe people that don't feel like what they do has some specific political angle or isn't addressing anything in some specific way. And something that I see artists do, and I've done it myself too, to like kind of make themselves feel better, is to be like, well, the general project of what we're doing is actually like this positive force. And then it's like, well, that's kind of a cop out, blah, blah, blah. And I sort of think, and there's been times that I've thought that, there's also been times that I've thought it's a cop out. I'm starting to think that the way things are moving into this kind of technocracy thing, that idea, like this just super basic, like, yeah, music, like artists are trying to channel truth and beauty or whatever, is going to become like a much bigger flag planted. I think it's actually going to become a really important kind of like war for the soul of humanity type of thing.
Yes.
A bifurcation of like, you don't see any people that are like defending art and truth and beauty that are also these Silicon Valley tech psychos. There's no crossover. There's
right.
No.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't, to say that all are, I mean, I saw somebody on Twitter, one of these classical music guys, and he was like, he tweeted some shit, and I'm like, man, I keep telling myself, I'm like, man, don't get into political stuff on Twitter anymore, because not only do you get in trouble, but also I change my mind on stuff half the time. And it's like, if I say something and I get yelled at, I might like agree with the yellers like right away. Sure. You know what I mean? I'm like, so maybe don't, given how all pinball all over the place I am. But this one guy, he tweeted this thing. He was like, no artist can really call themselves apolitical. If you claim to be apolitical, your art, you are supporting the status quo, which is conservative by nature. And he said, to support the status quo by being apolitical is to not be an artist, because that's the definition of being an artist. And I was like, bro, this is killing art. Like, I'm like, this is like one of the few things where I was just like, fuck you, dude. No.
Well, also, it's also logically inconsistent, because the idea that the status quo is like Trump and like whatever, Ted Cruz, and it's like, that's not true. The status quo is a complex thing
of a lot of things.
Joe Biden and all, Harvard University and the Atlantic Magazine and all kinds of things, and also CPAC and all this stuff.
Yeah, it's all one thing. It's all
it's more complicated than the status quo is just bad. Like there is a status quo that is domineering and kind of like suffocating, but it includes Google, which owns the thing that we're talking on right now. So it's like it is a bit complicated in that way.
Well, people use the word status quo to refer to the thing that they don't like.
That they don't like.
Status quo, you know what I mean? But my point, I was just like, look, man, was Bach a political artist? And you'd be like, well, you can analyze his work politically as far as like the material conditions under which, and I'm like, yes, you can. I'm not saying you shouldn't. But that's analyzing Bach. That's not what he put into it. What he put into it is worshiping God. So I'm just like, whatever. You don't have to believe in God necessarily, but
Well, I mean, There's this book by John Elliott Gardner, the conductor.
I've heard the name, but I don't know.
Well, he's this English guy that grew up in I think he grew up in a situation where there's a lot of choir music. He's really a choral music guy, and he was he's still alive, I think, like important figure in the kind of historical, the period instrument thing in the 70s and 80s, and he started this group. I mean, talk about the status quo, like in terms of like the classical music thing. I think it's called the Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment. That's the name of his band, and that's the name. It's in French. So he did this project where he took a group around and he played all the Bach cantatas on the day that they're meant to be played in the Lutheran calendar in these various churches all over Europe. And an interesting side note to this whole universality thing, truth and beauty, is that they put them, the historical performance classical music records, they get a lot of funding. They got a lot of money to put in these. They look super nice. They have great packaging. On the cover of each cantata, each CD is like, I think they're trying to go for this kind of like, we are the world thing. So it'll be like a picture of some like girl in Afghanistan, and it'll be like cantata number 56, mind
that is clumsy.
It's so funny. It's hilarious.
That's not based. That's just confused. That's confused. Yeah. That's very confused.
Anyway, so he wrote
I love it though, actually.
Check it out.
It's like so stupid. I kind of am into that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like some guy. Yeah, it's just like ridiculous. I don't even know.
Well, okay though. No, there is something maybe consistent though, because if you're into the Age of Enlightenment, like if you're really into that, like you actually do believe that enlightenment is for all. You do believe. I mean, of course, people be like, "Oh, that's colonial." You're like shoving Bach down the throats of people who don't need it in other cultures, which is also a good criticism of like leave people alone. But I don't know. It's obviously super super complicated.
Yeah.
But I didn't know about that guy. That's
so he wrote this. Funny. He wrote a book called I want to say, I'm mixing up this Miyazaki movie with the name of the actual book, but something about castles in the sky, I think, something like that. And it's a biography of Bach. That the first half of it is kind of about his life, and the second half really focuses on the choral music because that's kind of his expertise. So the first half, I've read it a couple times now, and it's like, I'm really interested in like the 30 Years War and that as a I got into that when the Syria thing was happening, because I saw somebody who was talking about the parallels between Syria and the 30 Years War.
Okay. And I'm so super ignorant about actual events in history. So
whatever. I mean, I'm like, I like to read history. I don't know why. I just grabbed.
No, because it's deep, dude. I wish, dude. Yeah, hip us, please. It's the only useful thing from high school. Please hip us.
So he talks about the conditions in that Bach grew up in. He grew up at the end of the 30 Years War, and if this was like in Germany, which wasn't Germany yet, it was like all these different like separate kingdoms or whatever. I don't know what you called them back then, but Germany was kind of like the proxy place for all these different empires to duke it out. And so Germany was like really destroyed. It was something like a third of the population was killed. There was like disease, famine, all this stuff. So that's the environment that Bach grew up in, like right after that.
Yeah.
And so then it's starting to talk about all the religious stuff, the Lutherans, and he's talking about like these composers at that time, like, because you'd be in some city state where it's like, hey, the king, like he switched sides to like the Calvinists, or not the Calvinists, but one of these things. And he's like, yeah, composers all the time would just kind of switch it up and it tells me like, okay, what they're after is like, there's something that the guy from the choral group that you had on, Bjorn, said that I thought was.
I was going to ask if you know him, or do you know him?
I don't know him personally, but I love the group.
Oh, they're
And
so crushing. Because he's in Lisbon. I mean, he lives in Lisbon. Even though
really,
they're that's
oh
the thing I
wow,
was going to ask. That's why. Because he's for those of you who don't, Bjorn Schmelzer is who we're talking about. He's runs the group Grain de la Voix, an early music group based in Antwerp, but he's based in Lisbon. Anyway,
yeah. I
but
forget why I brought him up, but this idea that like composers would that there's something that they're doing. Oh, I know what he said. He said this thing of like, one of you guys said this idea of like, there's this assumption that people in the past like knew less than us,
right.
which is probably not true in a lot of ways. Like that we're just so much smarter and have so much more perspective about life, and just because it's later in time. So
Yeah.
like the idea that like a person is making music, albeit in a really limited cultural environment, that they wouldn't have the thought somewhere of like, hey man, I just like making music and I'm trying to do something really deep here. Call it whatever you want. Call it Lutheran, call it Catholic.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get through so I don't get my head chopped off and I can still write these pieces.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Gardner doesn't go into a ton of detail with that with Bach, I think, because there's not a lot of information about him like in that way, like as his inner life as a person. I think he just worked all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of think like even if you're just taking it outside any kind of specific culture, and you see, this could be wrong. This could be just me projecting either Western stuff or just my own vibe. But it's like, in my mind, man, I'm thinking if you're whether you're writing, Baroque music in that time, or whether you're making, high modernist stuff in the 20th century, or jazz, or rap, or noise. I mean, I kind of think any genre, like, you have to have a certain, it doesn't have to be religious, but you have to have, if you believe in what you're doing, if you're going to really believe, I feel like there has to be some sense of like the sublime, this sense of like just going upward toward something that is like transcendental and pure and deep, and I keep thinking to myself, I'm like, when I think of politics, like political art or just being political politics, I think of like critique. I think of the idea of critique, like critiquing something. And I'm like, can that and is that sublime? How does that kind of, you know what I mean? Like,
Are they at cross purposes, you're asking?
are they? I'm not sure, because just aesthetically, I do kind of like both vibes. When I think about shit like Luigi Nono or something that I've been going deep with lately, and
he was hyper political, right?
it seems hyper political, and even if you don't know his politics, it like sounds and feels to me critical in some. I don't know. There's a negative, not in the sense of bad, but a negating, pushing crisis, rather than just this like I'm a humble servant to God kind of thing. Like,
I mean, that can be cool. I mean, I think it can just spin out of control in all kinds of interesting ways that make interesting art. Or maybe, I mean, I was doing something with Evan Parker like a few months ago in England, and somebody asked about Cornelius Cardew, and like, I was just sort of like, I was like, Evan, like, what the hell happened to that guy? Like, tell me about it. Like, you knew him. I'm like, what was going on? And so we just kind of got into this thing of like, he's writing these tunes about Mao and stuff, with making, it's like,
edgy leftist. Nice.
Yeah. I mean, back then, like the idea that there was like this whole like subculture of like, edgy leftists in like Europe and America that were like, I guess I want to just meet people that were doing that and be like, did you guys not know like what was happening over there?
Right. Mao apologism.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I
it
guess
was easier
like on the internet or something. So
I was gonna say it's easier to not know back then, but it's also funny. Let's not even go off, but like Evan Parker being you're talking about some Maoist communist Cardew, and then you're talking about Evan Parker, who's like apparently full Q now, right? Like he's just
whatever, man. We talk. The thing is, I've known him a long time, and like it's always a good talk. Like we talk about 9/11. We can talk about.
Dude, I want to have him on, man.
What's up?
I want to have him on the stream, bro.
Oh, do it. I'm sure he'd be into it.
Do you think he would do it?
Well, I shouldn't say I'm sure, but I would say ask him.
Bro.
I'll put you guys in touch.
Anyway, dude, let's do it. Sorry, I interrupted though. What were you saying?
No, it's fine. I mean, we can talk about him more later, but he's a really important friend and figure for me and everything. But like we've always talked about stuff. And actually, with all this stuff, it's like most of the people that I try to surround myself with have all kinds of weird ideas about stuff. The thing that I don't love is when I've heard the idea a million times in other places online. That's not as like impressive to me. Like I love hearing an original conspiracy theory. Like that's why, Nandor, he's got just tons of stuff.
Yes.
And it's really inspiring in a way, because it's like, these are like, just different ways of thinking about it. Like, I don't personally think that Federal Express is like, gassing people in the planes or whatever, but sure.
At least it's the first time. At least it's the first time you heard it. Yeah. Well, the thing with Nandor, it's not conspiracy theories, it's conspiracy facts, because Nandor does not lie. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned. But yo, man, let's get specific on the new record, man. I want to, or is that the newest one, Murmurs?
Yeah,
dude, because I want to, like, this is I guess it's a cool segue to talk about not that your stuff is apolitical or political, but that we're dealing with like pure sonic considerations.
Sure, but you're going to be surprised where the genesis of the From Beyond came from, because it kind of relates to what we're talking about in a way.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, let's play just a little bit. Is from, that's the centerpiece, is From Beyond, right? Kind of that's the big boy.
You can skip around too if you want. I mean,
we'll do a little. See, I've got the screen sharing here. All right, so let's check out a little From Beyond. Obviously not the whole piece, but like. Is that? I mean, I could have listened to the whole thing, obviously.
Oh no! We'll keep it.
We'll keep it. There were a few little Cecil-esque sort of. There were some things we didn't get to, like a few little sounds that we didn't get to, that I was hoping to get to. But in any case, yeah, man. I mean, I've got thoughts, questions, etc. But maybe you want to spark off. But okay, yeah. In case we said, From Beyond. That's what we just listened to a part of. It's on Peter's new record, Murmurs, and it's a piece for MIDI piano, right? I mean, this is totally MIDI piano. Yeah.
So first of all, we're on. How old are you? Like, you're around my age, 41, 40 or something.
I'm 42. Yeah.
Do you feel like that at this stage you make stuff? I talked to Jeremiah about this. That you make stuff that, like, having done all the stuff you've done, you make something and you're like, this is the shit, but I don't think other people are really going to realize that, because you know what I mean? Because it's like, I'm just a little bit on my own path, actually, in terms of my own self assessment or self critique of what I'm doing, and sometimes what you think might be your best stuff does not resonate with people.
Right. So I don't know if that's how
you had that feeling at all, or no?
I don't know, because my feeling about what I'm doing, just it's always changing. Before the record comes out, I'm like, this is the best thing I've ever done. Everything up until this is complete dog shit. Don't listen to anything other than this. Then the thing comes out, I start working on the new thing, and I'm like, that stuff was garbage. Like, this is the new thing. And then like 7 years later, someone will be like, your best work was that thing from 7 years ago, and I'm like, yeah, you're right, actually. Like, it just keeps, like,
It's better not to. I guess it's better not to fall into these traps. I mean, it's a very. I think it's like. I mean, for me anyway, it's like, I don't get anywhere by not being extremely self-critical. but you have to be careful because it can just destroy you, and it can actually prevent you from even doing anything.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I think that's a really hard like fine line to walk if you're like trying to make stuff that at least you think is great. Because the only person that can really tell you if what you're doing is good or not is really just you. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, I mean, there's nothing that having someone, you know, an artist that I respect like you tell me that they really like this piece, that's like another level down. You know, it's like
right.
You know what I mean? And then if some random people listen to it, and you know what, that's great too. But
yeah, well, that's what sorry, you go.
No, good.
Oh, I was gonna say I can't remember who it was, but someone pretty normie. I think it might have literally been Wynton Marsalis. Like someone is asking, like, you know, do you make music for the audience? Do you make music for yourself or for the listener? Mm-hmm. I think it was Wynton. He was like, I make it for the listeners, but the first listener is you. So
yeah,
there, you know, so you're your own audience and you're the first audience member. And then, like you said, it ripples out. It goes out to friends that you respect, then friends that you don't respect as much, and then then randos, you know.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, you know, this piece was one of the, you know, I write a lot of music, and like if let's say I have like you know, a gig with Being and Becoming, you know, like at some jazz gallery or something, or I have something at the Stone. Usually I'll write all new music for the gig. Every single time I do a gig, I try at least to come up with a bunch of new stuff. And I think it can be frustrating for the band members, but I also try to keep it I'm not like a perfectionist. The first time we go around, I try to open it up. I try, really.
Yeah.
And so most of the time that I do that, I'd say more than half the time, I do it. And when the pieces go well and they end up sounding good in the concert, I'm really happy. The whole thing until that moment, I don't like it. It's painful. It doesn't feel good. It's not fun. It's like me at this desk writing music and being like, this is awful. I need to just keep working on it until it's not so awful. And then it's like the day before the gig, and it's like, look, I got to just copy this out neatly and bring it into the band. Hopefully, it's going to be fine. That's what it's normally like. So
that's very contemporary music composer of you.
Well, also, you know, you talk about melody and stuff, and like I'm really into melody. Part of what I'm into is melodies, and when you're trying to like that idea of like you're chipping away at some just block of amorphous stuff until you find this melody that just cuts to the core, you know, in terms of what you're going for, you wouldn't change anything. It's hummable, it's memorable. I'm really into that. So to find that is not always a fun process. Like, you know, about, you know, the Beethoven scores where he like second movement of Beethoven's Fifth, he did it like 20 times or 100 times or something, like bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, bum. Like
I did not know that. That's awesome. This is encouraging, man. This is encouraging instead of the Mozart entire piece being downloaded from like, you know,
from God,
from like Zeus's head or whatever. You know?
Yeah. So okay, so that's what it's normally like for me, and I can't say I really enjoy it, but I do it. This piece was done in like a state of near mania last winter, and I like what was I getting into? I mean, Omicron kind of came and went and kind of like canceled a bunch of stuff. Like I got sick, but I wasn't really, you know, I didn't have any symptoms. So I was like, I have to just be in the house. That's when I started working on it. And so we have this, I don't know if you can see it, but I have this Yamaha Clavinova thing back there that my parents got. Like we got it when I was a teenager. The idea was like everyone in the family like can play a little piano. No one was interested in it except for me. So I took it to New York when I moved here from my mom's house. And it's one of the only things that I've kept with me every apartment I've moved to. When I went to Lisbon, I gave it to my buddy, Levy, and he just, you know, held on to it and like took care of it and stuff. So it has MIDI outputs. And I was like, hey, I should like just start messing around with this. And I was reading this book by this guy, Kai-Fu Lee, who's one of these kind of like Silicon Valley, he's just Chinese kind of Silicon Valley technocrat, just scumbag, you know, guy. And he writes this book about, he's really into AI. So he writes this book about the AI revolution. I think it's called The AI Revolution. And it's like a mix of explaining how this is inevitable, but also how we could possibly not have it be the most dystopian thing ever. Then there's this whole thing about how, you know, he made like billions of dollars and then all of a sudden like faced some trials in his life like later. And all of a sudden, conveniently, he has like this more open view about things after he's, you know, worked with all these huge conglomerates and Google and all this stuff. So I was just reading this and kind of just getting inspired, you know, just checking out this state of where things are with like AI and this kind of weird I'm not going to say it's propaganda, but maybe it is this idea that like well, you guys have to just accept this because that's what it is. And
I know.
this stuff will disappear, and like, you better get used to it. And I was reading about this, and I was thinking like I suck at math and I don't understand a lot of the stuff that I'm reading about. I got this book about algorithms, and in the very first chapter, it's explaining really simply about how you do these simple algorithms. And one of them is like this arrangement of 5 and 7 out of the number 12. And the author is like, yeah, you know, there's a really unique application of this exact sequence, and it's like the bell pattern from West African music, which people say comes from God. I mean, that there are people that be like that pattern is like godly.
I don't know the pattern. I mean, and what African music are we talking? Like
you hear like in the music that I like specifically have checked out is from a tribe called the Ewe tribe, EWE. I'm not saying it totally right, but and this is like in I think it overlaps a couple of different countries right now, like where they are, like a little bit Nigeria, maybe a little bit countries bordering that. And so, like, you know, the basic concept of like clave.
I mean, I know what the clave is, just that rhythm.
So
yeah.
Right. So it's taking the 6 and the 4 and making this composite like rhythmic melody out of it that implies the various tempos. And then when you put if you put figures from any one of the tempos on top, they all kind of like work together and create this swarm of like this polyrhythmic activity. And then there's dancing and singing and stuff. There's a guy that lives near me who has studied this stuff a lot, and I took a couple lessons with him, just super rudimentary, just playing drums. You know, so I was learning about that stuff.
This is I don't want to slow it up too much, but just I didn't know that about. To me, the clave is just like the Latin music.
Yeah, well, I think it comes from that.
Just that in Latin music, but you're talking about in musics from Africa. What the clave is this multi-layered thing of like basically different tempi at the same time, or implying different tempi at the same time. Okay, yeah.
And it's perfectly, you know, if you put 4 on top of it, a perfect amount of the pulsations in the clave are with and exactly off from the 4. Same thing with 6. It's like this perfect mathematical thing. And there's various theories about where that comes from and how these people long ago developed this. And then that radiated out, you know, with the slave trade basically to all these places, like to the Caribbean and to Cuba and to North America and Brazil. You know, these are all like a lot of clave based music.
Okay.
So to get back to Kai Fu Lee and the AI stuff, I was reading about this and I was thinking about, you know, algorithmic music, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool to like make a piece that takes these concepts, this like mechanistic, you know, just this awful stuff in my view, and flip it on its head and make something that's extremely organic and extremely human. And the way that I did it, the way that I thought about doing it was, I was like, I should play all of it myself. So I'm not a good piano player, but I can get around a little bit. So I started to make these like simple, like arithmetical arrays of stuff. So like the first thing I did was like random notes. I love the sound of random notes ping pong all over the piano. So I would make these like tables, you know, with a thing on the computer of like from the internet of just random number generators. And then I would label the notes, and I would sit there and I would have the metronome on at like quarter note equals 20 or something. And I would try to do it. I'd try to play it. And
Wait. Sorry. You would try to, okay, you'd have random number generator.
Yeah.
And then you would assign the different numbers to different notes.
Yeah, sure. Like 1 to 88. That's an easy one. I just labeled the whole piano.
Okay.
Sitting there, it's like a 44. Like, oh fuck, and try to play 44.
And then you had it, you had it notated, and then you tried to play the notation, or no?
I would just read the numbers. You know, I would put masking tape all over the piano. I would do all kinds of stuff just to get myself to do it. It was
but no rhythms, like just playing the notes in sequence.
So yeah, so like the opening of that piece is the most basic version is just me doing it just like super straight, plunk on the beat, right? And I was like, I need to have you know, like sometimes composing things just start to spin out of control. So as soon as I started doing this, I was like, okay, this is like a panel of stuff. I should have like 50 panels, and like they should all be different. And then I can start to stitch them together, and they're all like, so I started doing this stuff. And like, actually the second part of the piece where it went into those like weird little melodies and these big kind of clusters.
Yep.
The way I did that was like I would come up with these kind of scenarios for myself. So to be like, okay, it's random, random notes assigned to the middle 50 notes on the piano. And the rule is every 10th note, I improvise something. Doesn't have to be a note. It could be a chord, could be a little melody, and it's happening extremely slow. And then, yeah, so that kind of is how the section came together. So that I would just come up with stuff like that, and then eventually it started to spin out of control and turn into this thing of like, this is a piece that's kind of it's like a love letter to the piano in a way. I would just find all these different things that I just enjoyed or wanted to hear. Like there's like these things where I would do like a sweep across the white notes and a sweep across the black notes. And that became its own little character that comes out in a piece once in a while,
Yeah, well, it's also with the quantized, and just the speed of it. It's not doesn't say it sounds like electronic. Like there are those moments where it sounds like electronic music. Like the timbre like because of the speed, it just becomes it's like stuff. I'm interested. Like one of the cool things about that piece is that it's like there's obviously so much of it that is clearly not playable even by an insane virtuoso, but you do have this separation, like the density of it is like almost like someone could play it. I mean, it's like the hands, it does sound like hands go. I mean, you don't have 68 note chords, you don't have all the 88 notes of the piano hit at the same time. Like it does sound like sort of like a Stockhausen, like really hard to play thing. But then there's those elements like the repeated notes that are so fast.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's only like a little bit outside of like no one could play this. Like
I wasn't I wasn't interested in that. I was actually just trying to make something that I really, really enjoyed and sounded like what I was truly hearing and what I truly wanted to hear. And I just kept doing it until I was like, this is what I want to listen to. I mean, part of the joy of making a piece of like, I guess, electronic music like this is that you get to listen back to it a lot.
Yes.
And you get to just sit and like, there's a middle section where I was doing stuff with that clave pattern where it's like phasing between the different clusters. It's going really fast. And then I, slowed it down and just put these little minor chords on top. And I just remember sitting in my chair listening to it, being like, this is so fun to listen to.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. Well, that's when you've got these like really like dialed in structural, like conceptual shit, but the ultimate goal of it is just aesthetics and beauty. That you have that freedom to insert improvisation. To insert any improvisation, it's so great because you're just taking it outside of like, this is not Stockhausen. Well, it's not early Stockhausen. You're just taking it outside, and obviously taking it way outside of like whatever, like the progenitors of what, like non-caro or something,
Yeah, I mean, he's a big one. It's hard you can't make a piece like this and not. I mean, it definitely influenced some aspects of the piece, but I did think a little bit about what do I not like about non-caro. And there's things that I don't love about the structure of the music, and there's like this kind of way that a lot of the etudes start, like it's very like deterministic. It'll be like the voice and then the cannons, and then there's this sense in a lot of the pieces that things start to like all of a sudden just wrap up at the end.
I sort of remember that. I mean, because I haven't listened to. By the way, we're talking about Conlon Nancarrow, wrote for the player piano. He's like the first guy to like write music for the player piano. Which is basically like MIDI in the 100 years ago. I can't remember all that exactly what it like the actual stuff. Pieces themselves. Yeah, I mean, I remember just sort of being like, okay, this exists. My mind's straight up expanded now.
And also Ligeti. I mean, his music. Cable's music. A lot of people like influenced what I did, but I tried just to go through it, I guess,
Yeah. It's the thing of like MIDI, man, is like we're talking about AI, and I mean, this isn't so much. Well, one thing that's interesting to me is that I've heard some people say, like weird philosophy cats talk about how like AI is that all of human intelligence was always AI in a way, like especially like capitalism, that there is sort of a that there's been this it's been a development like because intelligence has always been a collective thing ultimately in some way, so it's like I mean, I don't know. It makes me think. I guess this isn't so much AI. It's maybe more like cybernetics or whatever. But to think of like notation,
Hmm.
just basic notation. You're already like using machines, like notation. Even in Bach's time, is a machine. It's a
Yeah,
technology. It's a
a piano
technology.
looks like a computer console to like an
Yeah,
alien, you
yeah.
know?
No, totally, totally. But I mean, just even to write out like that just even to write out like an invention for someone to play, you're like
Hmm.
plugging a technology, you're like controlling their body
Yeah.
with a machine. It's essentially a
Hmm.
MIDI sequencer, and it's like I that's not something I had ever really thought about until I started actually writing notated music
Yeah.
for virtuosos, where I was like, I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm like cybernetically kind of controlling this person. Like, we got to leave some room for improvisation here. Otherwise,
Yeah.
why don't I just program electronics? It's like,
Yeah, it's a really weird thing. I mean, I just the last thing I'll say about the piece, about, concerning this is that for me, it's a very like anthropocentric piece. Like a lot of the best, I think, like a lot of the there's, I don't think it's an accident that a lot of the greatest electronic music is really about like human beings and life and dancing and social
mm,
gathering and stuff. Like that's not an accident. I think that. I mean, there's this amazing essay by Bob, Bob Ostertag.
I do. I haven't heard his name in forever.
I mean, he's an amazing writer. I mean, amazing musician, electronic music pioneer, but also an actual activist and political person and writer.
Yes, he
He
was in
has,
Venezuela or something for a
yeah,
while
I
or
think
something like
maybe
that. Yeah.
Nicaragua back in the
Okay.
80s or El
Yeah.
Salvador, I forget. But he has this essay that has some cheeky title like "Why Electronic Music is So Bad." And what he means is, I think he's talking about like academic electronic music. At least, I
Right.
mean, probably most people don't even know that this even exists. Like we're talking about like people from like Princeton that will go to these conferences in the Midwest,
Yeah. No.
and he
Yeah.
was asked to like go to one of these things or to be like a judge at something, and he was like, you guys, like most music now is electronic, and you're just basically
Yeah.
saying that's not the kind of electronic music we do.
Right, 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 right.
um
Because it has a beat and like four on the floor makes it not smart or something. Right. Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
ridiculous because it's like, well, that's the electronic music that actually people can really connect to.
Yeah, yeah. I never thought about that. What you're saying, that actually that the most social music now is electronic. So the
Hmm.
most human, yeah, in a way, most human or most social stuff is
Yeah.
machine like driven or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to keep the piece feeling human. I mean, to be honest, I mean, I felt like when I made it that I was like, this is what I wish my solo trumpet concert sounded like. This is what I'm trying to do on the trumpet that I can't do it yet. And
Mm-hmm.
it
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
cool way to do that. But I've really been thinking about this idea a lot of like the it used to be that, growing up pre-internet, seeing it kind of, especially I think in the last like 10 years, kind of accelerate to this other thing where people are just online all the time. It used to be like you went online, like you went from this world that I'm in now. I
I
mean,
know.
we're
Yeah.
in both worlds now, but you went from this world and then you went online
Yeah. It
into
was like
this.
going to the store or something, right? It was,
Yeah. And
yeah.
now what's weird is not only is it mixed, most of the time, but I think it's almost like inverted or something. And now it used to be that you send yourself into the internet, but I think the internet is sending people back, like almost like
Oh,
holograms, you
dude,
know?
I have permanently changed my brain through the internet, not in ways where it's like, hey, what if maybe it's like no, no. I mean, it's like possibly worse. Like it's actually dark. I won't even spiral off, but it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
like I've been. There's no sense of like maybe. It's like I'm just now different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the same way I think that maybe like I'm wondering if we're going to see like a decrease in plastic surgery now that the filters are so good that you actually kind of don't need to do it. You can just modify everything. Like if your image is really about how you appear online, like it's not really worth getting like the fake butt or the fake lips,
How
you know?
interesting. I didn't even think about
We'll
that.
see.
Right.
But I think it's also like the idea that you don't really need to make AI because you can hijack actual, like almost like Matrix kind of thing. You can actually hijack people's brains and their souls in this world and have them be the mouthpiece for the fake consciousness or whatever it is.
Yeah. It's you're dealing with. I mean, the algorithm, it's dealing with incentives, so you've got incentives plugged. You're plugged into a web of
Yeah.
incentives and data driven behavior prediction, You know, basically is what we're. That's
Yeah.
like that's the main thing that's going on is behavior prediction. You know.
I don't want to come across as like such a Luddite. I mean, I actually kind of am in some ways, but the thing that I find so the thing that makes me sad is like the idea of like this predictive shit, this like idea of having an algorithmic, it's regressive. I mean, it is looking at what happened and then trying to say based on what happened, what could happen now. And it's like that's just not, in my experience, how a lot of art. I mean, the idea that we would offload or we would kind of forget about some of those interesting aspects of like human imagination. Like the other day I was in a bookstore and they had this small book of like art book of African masks from these different, and it's like some of the most imaginative. I mean, you can't even believe like that people thought of to do this.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
on an aesthetic level, like it's not imitative. It's really some wild stuff.
Yeah,
That
some of
people
it's very
always come up
psychedelic,
with.
like African art. You know, yeah.
Yeah, and so the idea that like you're not going to get, you're probably not going to get like a regressive, predictive type of model to come up with something like that. That's just like whoa. I mean, and I think for me, a lot of the best experiences I've had, like with art, listening to music, or especially with music, are when I'm listening to something and I'm just like, I can't believe this is happening, man.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
I
yeah.
can't believe that people even came up with
No,
this.
no, I know. That's like that's totally. I think that often, man. I think that often with like the best stuff. You're like, how,
No.
when did this? I mean, think, yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know though. With that, like, sometimes I wonder if like the way to like, there's no when it comes to like trying to avoid the negative side of this like algorithmic sort of invasion of the human. It's like I sort of it's so like the idea of just log off, man. It's like that's over, that's done, at least for me. But it's like I think about just like what about just
Hmm.
disobeying stuff by deliberately checking out stuff, that clicking on stuff that you don't want to check out,
Yeah, definitely.
like
Definitely.
actually, yeah, like
Yeah.
actually just because that's in a way like that's what I mean. I don't know how it was with you getting into experimental music, but I mean, for me, there was almost this like challenge of like just being like, I don't like this.
Oh, definitely.
I'm gonna go into this deeper
Yeah.
because it's compelling to not like something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like I don't know. I guess maybe it's a little more insane if you're just doing that for the purpose of dodging incentive structures to manipulate you, like
It's,
whatever.
you're
But it's
trying to trick some fake brain, basically.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
You
we
know?
still do have agency. Like, yeah, someone else, yeah, yeah. My friend Xylon, who was on the stream, was talking about Genesis Peorage has something about where she's talking about behavioral cut up,
Hmm.
where it's like Burroughs thing of like the cut up, the text cut ups, but with behavior. So
Hmm.
like try to subvert like who you are by
Mm.
just like doing stuff that's not like you
Okay.
to just be more people. I don't know. It seems like that could be subversive or
It could be.
creative with the algorithm. I don't know.
I mean, I saw like at there's like a Planet Fitness down the street from me on Church, and they got all the TVs, playing
Hmm.
all the different news stuff. It's like it's wild, man. It's like CNN, it's everything, Tucker, And there's this one thing they do on ABC that's like they were like they must be running out of money because they're like hosting some other network in the middle of the day called, I think it's called GME or GMA or something, and
Mm.
it looks like QVC. It's like these ladies selling stuff. And the other day I saw this thing that was these two ladies, and they were promoting something called National Day of Unplugging. And they were like showing all these things you could do like with your time. And I was like, they don't even realize how radical these ladies are going to wind up like incinerated in they're going to be boiled in a vat of acid by Jeff Bezos or something. I mean, that could be like a really radical thing. It's like, I mean, if everybody just got offline for one day, it'd probably crash the whole economy, like stop buying stuff
Probably.
on Amazon, stop clicking on stuff. I mean, that non-participation thing, but it's extremely difficult at this, like you said, to like undo this at this point.
I'm sort of done with part of this YouTube thing. I was just like I'm an online
Whatever, I'm
person.
in.
I'm just deep everything, every platform, every just everything, group chats with people all over the world, like
That's
etc.
cool. I wish I was
But
like I'm really ambivalent, and like I'm trying to figure out what to do because I'm not going to become like a YouTuber like in maybe the same way you are, or people that are even doing more like tutorial things. I just can't do that. Emotionally I can't do it.
yeah,
But
it's not
I
you.
have music I want to share with people, and it seems like right now the way I should just do that is like I'm trying to just do it through YouTube because
Yeah.
the record thing is kind of like I'm a bit deflated by the whole process right now of making records.
Well, the thing, people still love live music. Like that's the
Oh
thing.
yeah, that's
That's the
true.
thing. Maybe even more than ever. So that's
Mhm.
where it's like there's this sort of there's this like liquidation of the human. People are at shows, man. People are at shows.
Oh
This,
yeah, definitely.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
so so you do a lot of playing, man. So you're out there, you
I'm
know.
out there, but it doesn't seem like this thing of like, and I've felt this to be true for a while now. Getting out there and hitting the bricks and playing a lot of shows. If you just like, if you look at it from like a just numbers perspective, you're just not going to reach that many people. I mean, I don't play for big audiences, so it's like I can get
Yeah.
out there and play a ton of shows, but the idea that I'm going to like build a fan base or broaden my, it's just, I just don't see that to be true actually. Like, or if
Okay.
it's true, it's so incremental that, and it's not like I even need that or something. It's more just like if I'm making music that can't be listened to live, i.e., an album or some recorded stuff, how the
Yes.
hell do I get it to people that might enjoy it? You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's tough right now.
Yeah. No, it
But
is,
people go
man.
to shows, absolutely. And
Yeah.
something I really notice at concerts is I am almost never at a concert and I look around, if I check out the audience, no one's on their phone.
Yeah, yeah,
They're
no,
not.
that's the
They're
thing. That's the
listening.
thing.
You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, no, no, people are on their phones like every single millisecond except
Yeah.
no, shows people are on it, man. People are
Yeah.
on it. Especially if you're crushing. Like you can still get on stage, crush, people rush the merch table,
Mhm.
you have glory
Yeah,
for like
yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
like
Yeah.
45 minutes on stage and then a 45 minutes after,
Yeah, that's true.
like it's still there, man, and it's the life of kings, man, the life of kings and queens.
It's I mean, I really love it. That's my favorite thing. I mean, that, in a way, like something I'm trying to figure out right now is like I'm getting to do these like bigger kinds of gigs, like composition things, or play something where I may be rehearsing with a group in some other country for several days, or maybe a teaching thing. I love all of it. I'm lucky that I can do this, to have a career like that. There's nothing like playing music for like 100 people in a club.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
It's
No,
the
no,
best.
totally,
The absolute
totally.
best. And that's actually where you really blow people's minds the most. And that's where my mind is blown the most as a listener, you know?
Yeah, people they're kind of ready, but not they didn't know quite how ready they were, and
Yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah.
converted. Yeah, man. It's well, man. So yeah, I mean, you do all these different kinds of things. This is almost on the topic of like, well, not so much, not exactly. It's sort of a segue, but I
Mm.
mean, I'm always interested, right? Like in how people see. Well, actually, yeah, you were talking about how you see your own stuff and how it's like different than how another person might see it and all this, and it's like but you were kind of talking about in terms of quality, you're like, what do I love the most? But just in terms of like just tight, like genre isn't the right word. Different people there are artists who see all of their projects, like people who have a lot of projects, like
Mhm.
you and me. Some people are just like, it's all one thing. I
Mhm.
do not see divisions between this. It's just different sides of the same
Mhm.
sort of prism. But then a lot of the time I'm just like, no, these are different things. It's maybe someone else
Mhm.
could analyze that. It's like, oh, it's all one voice, but like,
Mhm.
like I'll just be like, I have a totally different approach for my rock band. I have a totally different
Mhm.
approach for this. I have no, like, do you see all these? Because I mean, because we're talking about this, and then we could next talk about being and becoming.
Mhm.
Uh, those are really different to my ears
Hmm.
in a lot of ways,
Yeah, yeah.
except in detailed ways. I can hear the language, the
Mhm.
harmonic language, and the voice. I can hear it, but I don't know. Yeah, do you see all your stuff as just like this one approach, or like?
Not one approach. I guess the thing that keeps me going, that keeps me, because remember, we're talking about, when you're a kid and you find music that makes you super angry and you don't know why you want to keep listening to it. That excitement of like, I just can't look away from this, right?
Yeah.
And then you try to see if you can generate that yourself. You can see if you can generate it for yourself or for other people. Like, that usually doesn't have that long of a shelf life. Usually it starts to, when you just live life and just grow up and have to deal with stuff, and especially when you start to when you plug the music thing into like trying to be like a professional musician, it's very common that that feeling starts to go away, and that
Yeah.
it takes work. It's like a relationship. You have to actually feed it, and you have to like really try to maintain that thing, because that's the whole reason you're doing it in the first place, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's the only way that I've found to, like, in a practical way, to keep that going so I stay connected to whatever this thing is we're talking about, is to like bounce off what I'm doing against these different players, different environments.
Mm.
And it has to be copacetic, it has to be with people that want to play with me, you know?
Yep.
But if I can just keep doing that, that's the thing that I'm trying to do. How it's received or if it's different, obviously I try to play different in different situations, but it's more just like if I'm playing with, you know, I this video I think I sent you of me with like the show and Koto player.
Yes.
We didn't talk about anything when we played, and we played a bunch of shows, and it was just wonderful. I mean, it was just, I wasn't thinking like I'm not gonna play my bebop stuff. It never occurred to me to play bebop stuff because I would have just messed up the whole thing.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So
Okay.
it's more
Yeah.
just like I just want to stay plugged into what I know it sounds simplistic or cheesy or something, but just stay plugged into what the music has to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I am prepared in some way for that situation to a reasonable degree, this is why I practice a lot. If you're prepared, then when you're thrown into a situation like that, you're like ready.
Word.
You're ready for
Okay.
anything.
Yes.
And you don't have to really worry about, I'm not going to say you don't have to worry about aesthetics, because just by choosing a certain thing, you're already making an aesthetic.
Yeah.
framework,
But the choice, okay, yeah. So a lot of it is about the people that
Yeah.
you collected, that you choose to play with. Yeah, right. So it's kind of like the unifying thing isn't that you're going for a unified aesthetic for everything, but it's also not that you're trying to do a bunch of different things. It's you're kind of like the unifying thing is keeping yourself on your creative, challenging yourself creatively and just staying in that inspired zone, and then that just that necessitates
That's
a lot
basically
of variety and stuff. Yeah. Because I do, because like the jazz, I mean, like, do you consider like see, I don't, this might be a little simplistic, dumb questions, but I am interested in sort of dumb shit like this. Like, do you think of Being and Becoming as a jazz group? I mean, is that like, how jazz is that? Is that
We've done it. I mean, the thing is, sometimes, part of what I like about that band is that the players all have more experience than me just doing that, playing straight ahead killer shows with like old masters and just doing that all the time. Like, done that somewhat, but all the players in that band have done it like a ton. And maybe that's like the main thing they've done, for parts of their lives or whatever. I know they're all young, but still they've done a lot of stuff. So for me, it's like, because I kind of like see myself on the periphery of a bunch of different scenes and not really central in any of them.
Yeah.
It's like, if I'm going to play music that comes out of that tradition or even slightly invokes it or whatever, how cool would it be to have people that like just do it like 100%? Wouldn't that be the best?
Sure.
And so then it also creates some kind of aesthetic problems, or like just kind of maybe it's not a problem, but like we had a gig back in the summer where like we just didn't have any time to rehearse anything, and I didn't want us to be fussing around with notation or my weird compositions. I didn't really want it to be playing free. The group doesn't totally excel when we're just doing that.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's play some tunes. Like, this is the reason people have this. It's like a common folkloric language. We all know giant steps. Let's play it. Like, actually just do it. And it's great. It's fun. It's a great show. But then it's like, it can't just be that. I need to aim for something a little bit higher than that, just for myself. It's also, I don't think that's where I shine the best, to be honest. So it's like, maybe that can be part of it, but I need to also think like a little bit more long-term in terms of like a band, so that group is really morphing into something that's really kind of like grooving and like atmospheric and not really based on solos.
It's
and,
not.
That's where it's kind of heading right now. We have a show actually next week. I'm going to have Azumi OE do like crazy lighting, like strobe lighting and stuff. And there'll be a minimal amount of notation. If there's notation, it's going to be stuff we can learn quickly, melodies, rhythms. I'm really trying to pare things down, for that group. Even the record we did, there's not a lot of stuff on the paper, actually.
It's not. Okay. Yeah. Because I mean, because the stuff with like the these compositions on Murmurs, like through note. I mean, that's largely through notated, right?
All four pieces are, well, the thing is the piano ones, I played them myself and then edited them together. So they're fixed, I guess.
Yeah, fixed
Yeah.
stuff.
And the flute pieces are all
yeah,
notated, yeah.
because there's a vibe with like form in music that is completely through notated by one person that you don't get. It's not ever to me. Well, it can be with improvised music in small groups, but you know what I mean. There's sort of like when you do like larger groups, there's just formal things that just don't
happen.
That don't happen, and there's just like also just this vibe of form with like with like compositions like on Murmurs, and just with music in this sort of general realm of like there's like a really thoughtful vibe of like things changing, things not changing, going into strict repetition, going into imperfect repetition, then suddenly going on to one note, you know. That's like, to me, that's a very, very, I know it's like genre labels are stupid, but to me, I think like contemporary like composition,
totally,
to me, that's like the essence almost, in a way, that type of attention, you know. It's like, to me, it's like, it's not really about notes as much necessarily, but that vibe of like, you're in time is going by, how are we dealing with change and not change, and etc. Like, I mean, is that kind of a different psychology? Like, do you bring that to like the improvised thing? Because one can with different results, but
the form thing,
just that vibe of like really pushing the sounds around, like, you know, really like that intention of just like, it's this and it's that and it's this.
I love it. I love it.
I know that's the shit. I mean, really, like, do you like are you on that tip in being and becoming with the improvised aspect?
No, I mean, I guess I'm a utopian with this kind of stuff. So I would hope that if we spend enough time together, there's certain types of formal juxtapositions or layering or progressions that we can improvise. I mean, you can improvise anything if you get comfortable enough with each other, actually, if you're all on the same team, you know? But, but for that album, because we had to make it at a pinch because it's super New York kind of thing, I had a plan. I just came in and had like, we're going to do this. I mean, the whole album we made in 6 hours on one rehearsal.
A New York kind of thing, you know what I mean? It's like
super.
Like, I woke up in my one-room apartment with 20 million roommates. I got to the gig. We had 25 minutes.
Exactly. I mean, I was living in Lisbon when we were making that album, so I wrote the tunes in Lisbon in my kitchen, and I was like, these can't be longer than one page. That's just what it's going to be. I'll figure out the rest later. And so we did a rehearsal. We got into the studio, and then I had a quick little plan for most of them, and it just went by like that. And like, we were lucky to get, you know, 1 or 2 takes of everything, and I just edited it together, and that was the album. It was very cut and dry. It wasn't like inspiring or something. It was like, let's just get it in here and do it. And I was really happy with it, you know?
Yeah. The music is inspiring, but maybe the process wasn't.
Wasn't very inspiring, you know? So I'm trying to move maybe in more of a direction, depending on what the bands are, with allowing certain formal things. I mean, there's this guy named John Paul Borelli. He's a guitar player that he did some stuff with he's on a cool record with Elvin Jones and McCoy Tyner in the 80s, and he was involved. I think he worked for Columbia Records a little bit, and he's done some stuff with Vernon Reid, like kind of in that world.
Yeah,
interesting guitar player. And he lives in Berlin, and I invited him to join my quintet when I had my quintet for a few years, and he did like 2 gigs with us, and we're improvising and stuff. Jim Black was playing drums. It was awesome.
Nice.
So after the tour was over, like a couple of days went by, and I was in Berlin playing a solo gig at this little festival, and he came and saw it, and he was like, there's like a certain way that older musicians just give you advice without saying too much. Yep. He was pretty specific though. He was like, man, like, it was cool playing with your band. It sounds great. I hear what you're doing. You should get your bands to play like this. This is, if the whole point of this is to make an original language, you're kind of doing it more in your solo thing. Now I'm elaborating on what he said.
Yeah.
And it really made me, it was like great advice, and it really made me think. And it was like, because in the solo stuff, I'm able to improvise the kinds of formal things that you're talking about, because I can make those decisions. Like, I'm going to crossfade this, or I'm going to do this hard cut, or just weird stuff that you generally don't hear in improvised music.
Yeah.
As a soloist.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, this is getting at what I'm. Yeah. So he was saying, bring that to
the sounds, like all of it. I think, you know.
Yeah.
And so I since he said that, it made me think, and I've been kind of trying to go in that direction more aggressively, you know, depending on what the band is, you know.
Yeah. Because like being and becoming, I mean, now just the name of the band, that got me thinking about all kinds of stuff. And I know being and becoming, it's in the history of Western philosophy. I mean, and this is I'm not read up on all these
It's a
examples.
Heidegger thing, is that right? That's not where I got it from, but
Well, there's, I mean, that's in Heidegger. It's also in I mean, Plato, I think, laid this down. By the way, in the comments, the erudite among you,
uh-huh.
please hip us if you have things to chime in. But I know Deleuze very big on becoming. I think more so than being. But
Mhm.
Heraclitus is all about becoming. That's my
Interesting.
fucking dude. But but when I think of it, not just on the Western philosophy tip of those things, I think of like form in contemporary music,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
like becoming as change,
Hmm.
being as static objects of sound,
Yeah.
like this kind of thing. I mean, were you is that does that title kind of where does that title come
The
from
title
for
came from
you?
this guy, Inyat Khan, who was this Sufi writer, actually. He was a musician who was one of these people, I want to say like late 19th century, early 20th century, that kind of was proselytizing and talking about Sufism in the West and going on these lecture tours and stuff. And he wrote a lot of his books are really like aphoristic because they're just his lectures boiled down to these like compilations. So they're kind of, I have a few of his books and they're kind of all the same, honestly, but there's one called The Mysticism of Sound and Music. That's like the one that's usually easiest to get. And I think he actually does have a book called Being and Becoming, which I didn't know, but the phrase and part of the lecture was in one of these other books.
Mm.
And so I was just checking out some of the like more like Eastern philosophy stuff like and thinking about improvisation, this idea of like flow state, the idea of like things constantly being in change, the impossibility of anything actually being, you know.
Yes,
And I
yes.
thought that was kind of a cool concept. And for the, I thought it was kind of just a cool name for the band. So I was like, let's go with it. And like the music that we're making now, or that I'm hoping that we're making now, actually reflects that a lot better than this sort of like noise music vibe on the
No music.
on the album, that we did, which is it's fine with me, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, yeah, I could see it. I mean, I could, yeah, the idea of being and becoming, it could apply to all these different things with music. I mean, yeah, you're talking about time. I mean, just music is in time, so
and
that's
change,
already
yeah,
time and
yeah.
change. Um, I yeah, I mean, I think have you ever read that? It's been a while since I've read it, so I'm not gonna be able to like cite it and really go off. But that essay that Stockhausen wrote about Webern, and I think it's like structure and experiential time.
Yeah.
Do you remember that
I have
thing?
this compilation of his writings, and I was just so inspired by so much of it. I don't remember the Webern essay though.
I think, yeah. I mean, he's talking about like rates of change,
Oh
and
yeah.
he's talking about like change, and then like rates of change, and like
Mhm.
change of rates of like this meta, like and just how you experience time based on the sort of flow of information. I mean, Alex Minchek really put me
Mhm.
on
Yeah,
to just thinking about these things in terms,
definitely.
because
His
I
music reflects that a lot. Yeah.
yeah, and I hear a lot of especially in the solo flute pieces on the new thing, and
Mm.
to an extent in the MIDI piano, but most of all in the two flute pieces, that vibe of like imperfect sort of repetition
Yeah.
of a right of a thing,
Yeah.
where like I think it's a Deleuze thing, I'm not sure, but this thing of like everything is a becoming, everything's changed, but like when the becoming slows down enough, it becomes like it's being, or like it's objects,
Interesting.
and I
Yeah.
just in your thing you have a lot of stuff where it's like it's like imperfectly repeating obsessively. And this is, I
Yeah.
do this, I don't know where I got this, maybe from Minchek, but I mean, we all got this from different places, but like I think when I
Oh, musically,
improvise,
yeah.
not when I not music that I write so much, but improvising, this obsessive um orbiting around a thing that's uh like a like area of a type of a musical object,
Yeah.
it and it's like it might settle into repeating us very the exact same thing,
Yeah.
but even when it does that, it isn't like, oh, that was the main thing. It's like there is no one main thing, you know,
Yeah.
it's not like theme and variations. This is the theme and then it changes. It's like the whole thing is change,
Yeah.
but then it'll hone in on
Yeah. I
like
mean,
one
I think
manifestation. Like
I don't
you're
know where
doing
that
that a
comes
lot in
from.
there. Yeah.
I'm not sure where that comes, and I hear it in I hear it. What's cool is I hear that sound in like a lot of my peers' music, but it's all different.
Yes,
You
yes, yeah,
know?
yeah. I mean, I think it might be. I mean, Taborn, you know, his
Yeah.
improvising, you know, I think, I mean, it may just be if being an improvising musician, having absorbed a lot of like maybe modernist post-war classical stuff,
Yeah.
but
I
like
mean,
you
yeah.
just naturally come up with this certain like
I mean, I think,
flow.
for me, Evan Parker's solo music was made a really big impact on me when I was like 19 or 18 or whatever, when I was in college.
Mm.
And that's a lot of what's going on in that music, you know?
Okay, I got to check that out more because, dude, my knowledge of Evan Parker, it's
Oh,
not as
man.
much of it as it should be. The duo record with Derek Bailey, or there's probably a few, but Arch Duo,
Mhm.
that was like like serious for me. But then
Yeah.
I never
Oh,
went. And
man. I mean,
yeah,
I'm almost jealous that you're going to experience some of this stuff for the first time, but
yeah, yeah.
it's not like anything else, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess for you and anyone listening, I think for me, the gateway drug would be there's an album called 6 of 1
Okay.
that I think is, I mean, everything's on YouTube now. His stuff, they were slow. Him and a lot of the stuff was done through this label called Eminem, which released a lot of the British free improv stuff. Martin Davidson did amazing work, a lot of records, but they were slow in the digital thing. They were like not into it in like the early 2000s. And I was like,
Yeah,
guys,
yeah.
like, whatever. I mean, so a lot of it wasn't really digitized. So it's kind of weirdly hard to find, but 6 of 1, and then which from early 80s in a church. So it has this kind of really filled. Sam Pluta says it sounds like Renaissance music or something like that.
Hell yeah.
And then there's one called Conic Sections, which is mental.
That I've heard I've heard a little bit of Conic Sections. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And
Does that get into that obsessive,
oh yeah,
formal kind of thing? Yeah.
yeah, because what he's doing, I mean, he wrote an interesting article about this in the 90s for like as a program note about literally how he's doing what he's doing, just breaking it down on a technical level. And it has to do with like filtering a bunch of different processes and patterns on top of one another that don't fit. So it'll be like polyrhythmic fingering between the two hands, and then blowing through the saxophone, and then using like the overtone, his throat and the overtone series to move up and down while the saxophone is being open and closed in these different ways that are asymmetrical. So then these melodies are repeating and popping out, but not exactly. And then of course he's improvising, so he's modulating them all the time with his tongue, with volume, all these different. It's almost like what New Complexity people wish they could just. It's what they when they write about what they're doing. It's like it would probably sound like that, but then it never does. You know,
Right.
There's this whole thing with composers, not just complexity stuff, but like contemporary music composers. There's a big kind of move in that world towards like, I think it comes from a place of trying to make it more human, but they're like, it's all about the body, and we're gonna like center the body, and so then you have this piece. It'll be like the fingers are on one stave. The tongue is on another one. There's some weird rhythm. And it's like, it would be like if somebody trained you to ride a bicycle by being like, first, like put down your left leg.
Yeah.
Nobody thinks like that. It's not embodied.
Yeah. Well, that's yeah. I love Helmut Lachenmann, but he has that, right? The multiple staves for like how each like finger and toenail is like moving.
Yeah.
Like at the
I don't know if he has. I mean,
I think he does that.
He may do that. There is a piece called Pressione for solo cello that's actually just these like physical instructions of what to do, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I've checked that out. Yeah, I remember there was like a it was in this masterclass with Louis Andriessen like years ago, and he was like he said he was talking about he had some student who was like yeah, like he like played him this, like the student played him some free jazz saxophonist that he was friends with, and he was like, I want to like write compositions that like achieve this, and Andreessen was just like, just improvise, like just do that, like why are you trying to like
yeah
like
it's a real can of worms. I mean, I have a I guess a tough love relationship with that whole world, contemporary music. I think it's just in a weird place, you know. It's like trying to get itself out of whatever box it put itself in. And it has no idea. It's like it's really kind of cringy watching it, try to figure out what to do.
People falling all over themselves to
Tripping over
not
coffee tables left and right.
to
I mean,
not do what they decided to do. I know, it's like, yeah,
it's crazy. And I think as someone that's always moved between those worlds, you know, like in New York, when I moved here, I was very stubborn about not wanting to rely on music. I think this is maybe not a great thing that I did. I didn't want to rely on music to make a living. So I was like, okay, I'll just do the music stuff. I want to hit the ground running, play solo gigs in the you know, weird venues, DIY venues and stuff.
that's
And I
how
was
we
like, I'll
met.
just get day jobs, you know, and just do that and keep it separate. And like after a few years of that, I met enough people in the classical trumpet world to, and this is something I tell like young students now, is like things work differently back then. You know how you got a gig back then? You had to really humble yourself. You had to call some older trumpet player that had work and introduce yourself and say, hey, maybe you heard about me through someone else. And then be like, I'm looking for work. Can you hook me up somehow with something? And they'll be like, I'll see what I can do, kid. Then you might get a call in 3 days. Hey, we need like, it's a wedding ceremony on the Upper West Side for $75. Can you come do it? And then you'd go do it and hopefully not mess it up. And if it would get back to the person that asked you to do it. And like, I had to do that kind of stuff. It was normal actually, you know, to do that, to
That's legit,
get into that world. And so a lot of the gigs that I got early on, because you have to kind of choose which, there's like the Broadway scene, you know, there's the you know, the Long Island wedding band scene. There's all these different scenes that you have to really have a lot of tenacity to even get your foot in the door at all.
Yeah.
There's New York City and everyone's good. So the contemporary music world seemed to be just proliferating. There was a lot of groups that were doing cool stuff, like Jason Eckhart and Marilyn Nonkin had this awesome group, Ensemble 21, that did the Ferneyhough composer portrait show, which I got to play on. Like Alarmal Sound was doing stuff, like Ice was starting out. So they needed people to play these gigs. And I was like, after a few years of the day job thing, I was like, I think I can like start to make some money and like work as a trumpet player. I should be doing that. So I started to kind of enter that world. And what was interesting from my perspective was that like, I didn't enter that world as an improviser, as any kind of artist. Most of the time it would just be like Joe Schmo. I was just some trumpet player reading the part down. And I was fun. And I was just kind of just playing that role, you know?
Yeah. Just being great at your instrument.
Just trying to play the gig well, you know, and then what happened was as I started to do my own thing more, it kind of started to eclipse the work that I was doing with the new music groups, and in a lot of really healthy ways, it started to kind of converge, like with Wet Ink or to some extent with Ice. So I've always kind of been a little bit like my perspective of the new music world is really as like a grunt, kind of as a player, and to some extent, like show up and just play the piece, you know, in the rehearsals. And you get a certain perspective from that you don't get as a composer. I don't think.
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, well, cause like, so in a way, like you're being an artist, like functioning as an artist and viewing yourself as one, like, you know, and like, that was separate. Okay. That was separate from the new music thing.
Yeah. It was moonlighting kind of.
Was that, so your solo trumpet, like when you put out the first like solo trumpet stuff, and that was like, you know, that really like made a splash, you know, like, so that was that kind of like for you, that was an extension of you as a jazz guy, or I mean, like how, or like what was like to you that wasn't part of
the new music thing.
To you, you didn't think of that as new music, like
not
part
at
of your
all,
new music.
Not at all.
That's interesting.
And in fact, I looked at it as a liability. That was the kind of thing where you do not want to go to some fancy new music thing. I mean, eventually, you know, you start to get close to people, and I did kind of win some people over in that way, and it wasn't as like black and white as I'm making it sound exactly, but no, I didn't want to go to some orchestra gig and like tell people about my extended technique, weird trumpet stuff. That was like definitely like, you know, that's liability. So for me, the solo stuff came out of the thing that really got me into it was in college at Oberlin. Like it's only an undergrad school. So the people that really knew the most about music, there was some cool faculty, but really it was about the students. Like Brian Chase knew all the coolest records. He knew like I remember his senior recital was like all kinds of stuff, man, like a graphic score piece, a Derek Bailey poem, he's drumming on a chair, some like super swinging thing. And so there were just these certain people that kind of introduced me to the wider world of like experimental music, cool record collections and stuff. And then I started to find out about this kind of world of freely improvised music that was mainly from the AACM stuff, but really more so like the spontaneous music ensemble and like some of the Peter Brotzman stuff.
Okay.
And I
Yes.
actually started finding books about it before I could even listen to it because it was hard to find the music. So I was like reading about this stuff, being like, this stuff sounds like it would be really cool. I want to check this out. And then eventually I got some CDs, like the library or whatever. And I started to think like I had this idea of like expanding the possibilities of the instrument, but it didn't seem to fit the music I was playing. It was almost like a bad fit. And all of a sudden I found this music where like, no, that's the whole deal. It's all
I
about.
see. Okay.
And when
Okay.
I
Yeah.
heard like Cecil Taylor or Braxton or like Zorn's solo stuff or Evan, like Barry Guy, the bass player, I was just
Yep.
like, oh, okay. So if this is a thing, I'm going to try to do that. I want to be
Deep.
like one of
Okay.
these guys, you know, and just come up with
Okay.
my own thing on the instrument.
Okay, so that was early on. You're trying to do that, but it was like, but then and that's interesting that playing in new music ensembles in New York was not plugged in with that because I wonder if like, is it true? I get the impression because I'm not really in that scene. I mean,
Yeah.
I flirt. I've got my hand in a little bit, but it seems like our generation is the first generation where being and I wonder if maybe it became this way over the course of like our 20s and 30s where it's like it seems like now to
Mm-hmm.
be a like quote unquote new music, contemporary music coming out of classical, whatever you want to call that, contemporary classical, it is expected that you can improvise. I mean, it's not necessarily
Changed.
expected, right? It's changed, right? I mean, it's not expected that you like developed an entire new language on your instrument, but it's expected that you can come up with stuff spontaneously and you're maybe down with Cecil
Mm-hmm.
or Derek Bailey and you have some yeah. Is
I
that
think
right?
I think two things changed. I think one thing is just on a professional level, things change. People are expected to do more that they weren't expected to do before, and I think that just happened. But something I've kind of noticed is I think that world, a lot of it was like really predicated on. I mean, we got to be honest. The new music world is held. It's basically propped up entirely, almost by the dedication of the players. That's what keeps the whole thing chugging along. How many times have you been to a new music concert where there's like 6 pieces and 4 of them stink? All the time. I mean, it's normal. There's not the same type of attention. It's not like a aesthetic meritocracy in the way that like if you go to see like a metal band at St. Vitus and it stinks and they like forget the songs and they can't play, it's like, hey, what's going on? That's
Right,
not
right,
cool,
right.
right?
Right. Or if
Now,
they're nailing it, but the riffs are just not good.
it's
It's
not good.
just,
The band will
yeah.
be punished. They won't come back. Maybe like people might leave, and that's true in most music scenes. So the idea that you can have a piece like a 30-minute chamber piece that's boring that nobody likes, and there's no accountability for that, I find troubling. And I think the thing that really keeps it all going is that the players are these highly trained, usually interested people that are devoting themselves to this stuff that make it sound at least decent, if not great. And so a lot of that had to do with the fact that the music's challenging. So you'd have these people like, I'm gonna learn Ferneyhough, time and motion study. And it's like, damn, dude, it's like, I don't know about the music, but like, this is insane, what you're doing.
Yeah,
I think
athletic,
at a
yeah.
certain point, there's sort of like an acceleration of technique where the music's actually not hard enough for the players anymore. So the players are jumping ship. And now because things are so integrated, they're looking at like, I know like the people like Josh Modney or like Mariel, these are people that like, I mean, Ryan Muncie, RIP, like I remember being in a rehearsal with him once. He's reading some insane soprano saxophone part, just nailing it. He's like sight reading it ahead of the rehearsal.
Yeah.
And he's like, man, I could improvise stuff better than this, And I was like, you should, man.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
I think some of it comes with a healthy kind of like ego from players of like, I'm going to try to do my own music.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I'm always fascinated, like classical music, like there is this thing at least, but maybe it's gone, but this sort of like in older generations where it's like, do you even like music? Or like, what music were you into? Like, were you just a band guy who was good at being in band in high school because you could do the thing?
Yeah.
But you didn't actually listen to anything, whether it's pop music or underground music,
Yeah.
And then in college, you just kept playing the oboe, and like at no point were you like, fuck yeah, music. Like you just the whole time have just been nailing stuff. I do wonder, that is kind of, but it seems like at least in the contemporary music scene, like there's not people like that. Like everyone
people are pretty into it, man.
Everyone is like an artist at this point. Like you can't really excel without having some actual like artistry, of your own.
Yeah, and I think classical music also has this thing where like the conviction that has to go into a performance of a piece of music to make it listenable isn't a given. You know, like if you're doing a show with Extra Life, you're feeling it. Like it's your band. I mean, it's your thing. I mean, even if
Right.
it's not the most inspired night, it's like coming from you, right?
Yes, yes,
Same thing when
yes.
I play. It's like might not be the best night, might not be the most inspired night, but it is your music. If
Yeah,
you have to,
I literally think about my entire life every time I go on stage. I know that
yeah,
I know that sounds. I consciously sit down and I think about from birth to right now,
how I got
like
here.
every time. It sounds grandiose, but
That's
I do
great.
that now.
I
Yeah,
think that's great. So with classical music, it's not that has to be manufactured. The players have to manufacture.
yeah,
So if you see like the Jack Quartet read down just anything, usually the reaction is just like, "Oh my god, like this is amazing." It's almost like they're so good, like as an example of just I don't want to say sell. It sounds crass to say selling, but they know how to sell a piece. You
mm,
know, they make everything they play sound great. And that's like that's an extra level of involvement in the music beyond the technical thing, rehearsing, knowing all the weird rhythms, blah blah blah.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That the music needs, to kind of get across to people. So I
Yeah,
don't know. Yeah, it's definitely a strange world. I mean, the embrace of improvisation. I see it. I mean, all I have is my limited, vantage point. Like, I think I see it happening a bit faster here than in Europe.
really.
And I think that as much as there's like this, I think people would be surprised behind closed doors how ignorant classical musicians can be about all other kinds of music.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've I've worked enough composing music for classical players that I've seen it, and I'm just like, whoa.
It's not necessarily. I mean, the players. It's one thing to be a player. I mean, there was this thing that happened to me a couple, I guess, last fall or maybe 2 Octobers ago. Doing a show, and I'm leave all names out of it because it's not about the people. It's actually just about the whole system, right?
Right.
And I'm playing a show, and at one point the band plays Round Midnight. Like we're doing all this crazy stuff. We play Around Midnight fairly straight up. Like I play the melody, we improvise, and there were some like really well-known composers that had come to the gig, and we're talking afterward. They liked the show, and they were like basically trying to make the self-deprecating. They were like, "Oh, is that like My Funny Valentine?" or like, "What was that?" And I was like, they were trying to make the self-deprecating joke of like, "We're so lame, we don't even know what this is." And I was sort of like, "Why are you guys bragging that you
Yeah,
don't know?"
you're like, yo, that's dark, dude.
You
Like,
should
I would
know
not
what that
tell people
is.
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was sort of it gave me an interesting window. It's like, so I guess it's almost like a willful ignorance, I guess, of whatever. I mean, I'm into lots of different stuff and tons of stuff. I don't know anything about New York City hardcore. Like that's just life, you can't know about everything, but I'm not going to like brag about that. I don't know about it.
Yeah, right, right, right,
It's
right,
just
right.
odd to me. So I think that
Well, that's
world,
almost that'd be like
it's,
a humble brag of like I'm so deep on what I'm on that I didn't even
yeah,
have time to check out, yeah,
yeah. Anyway,
whatever.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it is like I don't know, virtuosity. That's another topic that I'm
Mm.
interested in with your music, man, because like when you we hadn't talked in like a little while since I moved out to LA, and you reached out to me having seen that video that I did called Practice and Hierarchy
Oh
in
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah. I like that.
musician's
Yeah, yeah.
life. Yeah, and so I was like, hell yeah, dude. I mean, actually at that point I was like, yo, I really want to have Peter on the stream, but
Oh,
it took a
cool.
while. It took a
That
while
was a long time ago. That
to
was
do
during
it.
COVID.
Yeah. That was like right when I started the stream, but it's like I was like, hell yeah, Peter would respond to that, because I know because clearly I am interested though, like, what role virtuosity plays in your music, like maybe even just as an idea, like how you think of it, because it's like you're known as a virtuoso, but then I remember I tried to find some interviews with you. And there was a thing where you were talking with Sam Pluta, I think it was,
Mm-hmm.
and at a college, and you were like, you said something. You were like, I don't even care that I play the trumpet. It's a platform for art,
Yeah.
And you were like, I don't care that he's doing electronics. It's about a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, I'm just interested, like, just how that plugs into like just virtuosity and like do you play with people who have no chops ever? Why not? Like stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, in theory, yeah, I mean, the trumpet is a hard instrument to do interesting stuff on if you don't have some kind of technique. It's not like other instruments. I think it's a little bit I have to say, more challenging on a basic level.
Oh, it's harder. Oh yeah.
Just to get a note to sound the same, like one day after the next. I mean, I always joke to students, like, we just practice to not get worse. We're not even trying to get better.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, no, it's easier than the piano to make a sound.
But the expectation,
Yeah.
because the piano is easier to make a sound, the expectation level is through the roof, you know?
Right.
And then you can fine tune, obviously, like tone, technique. I mean, I'm not saying that it's, you know, any instrument is easy, but the basic operation of a trumpet is a problem. And so you really don't have like a lot of situations of players that are doing really interesting stuff that don't have some version of, I think virtuosity can be subjective. They don't have some version of virtuosity with what they're doing. Like Bill Dixon, who I didn't really know about until, I'm actually happy I didn't find out about him until later, because I think he would have had a much bigger impact on my playing, you know?
Yeah, loom too large. Yeah.
Yeah, too large. I mean, he didn't start playing trumpet until he was like 40 or something.
Oh, that's sick. I love hearing that, dude.
Yeah, and he didn't sound that good at the beginning. He couldn't really play that much, but he had a lot of ideas. He was like a painter and stuff. And so by the time he had been playing for like 20, 30 years, like when he was up at Bennington making these recordings by himself, it's not like he became some virtuoso in the traditional way, but he definitely had like a virtuoso command over his stuff.
Yes.
You know, and I respect that. That's cool. I mean, most importantly, the music's cool, you know?
Yeah. A lot of work had been, it's music that is clearly the product of a lot of labor and stuff.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I had like I wasn't like a prodigy, but I definitely had like a higher than normal aptitude for playing the trumpet. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I wanted to run with that, you know? Yeah. I always practiced a lot. When I found these other types of music, like especially, I mean, the thing about, I don't want to spend too much time on the trumpet because I actually think it's a little bit almost boring even to me in a way. But the trumpet is like,
that's answering my question though to an extent. I mean, that's almost satisfactory. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
It's just sort of like to get back to the kind of institutional thing, like the way that classical music and jazz music deal with the instrument, like in the institutions where you're like taking lessons, is still pretty different. It's more common that you would be taking classical trumpet lessons to like hopefully get a job in the New York Phil or whatever, and get a lot of technical training. That's like pretty good. Like the level of technical training has gotten a lot better in the last like 30 to 40 years or whatever. Like,
yeah.
And that's not always true because with jazz musicians, like you want to be able to do all this cool musical stuff, like play Countdown or whatever, right? The problem is you can't play that stuff unless you have some, and a lot of the older jazz trumpet masters, they all knew that. So there's something that kind of got lost along the way somehow. I mean, it's not like as a rule, but I guess when I started to kind of put all these pieces together and think like, okay, like I have some technical aptitude, I'm trying to increase that. I like playing the instrument a lot. I like doing crazy stuff on it. The contemporary music that's written for the trumpet is usually pretty bad.
Right.
So what am I going to do now? You know what I mean? It's almost like the development of virtuosity and like my musical appetite started to sort of converge in certain ways, and then amplify themselves. You know, which is it's a very particular way of dealing with the instrument. And then as I got older, I started to, I think when you get older, like the whole idea of practicing just takes on a different meaning. You know, like just enjoying, just focusing on something, and just. That's practicing. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to use whatever that is in a concert or whatever. So
yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I was talking about in that video, the sort of the religious or ascetic, sort of prayer side of it, where you're building who you are rather than even just trying to get some material together. It's like self-building, To even be practicing. It's like, but I mean, I often like wonder about like, I don't know, playing with people who have different backgrounds, like way different backgrounds. I like the idea that I could do deep projects with someone who's like way way less, seasoned on their instrument than me. But I never do. And I mean, there's like some reason for that. Like I never, you know what I'm saying? Like I like the idea that could work, but ultimately I always end up playing with people that are in my general, league of not that I'm Mr. Chops at as far as the grand scheme of guitar players, but it's like Yeah, I like the idea. I could play with someone who like barely even knows what a C major chord is. It just doesn't happen though.
It doesn't mean the idea
you
is, it doesn't mean that it's not true. I mean, like, I've definitely been in situations, especially like as a teacher, where like, yeah, that of course, it's like when I do these workshops, like what I try to do is I try to make it really based on playing and not that much about explaining stuff. Of course, there has to be some talking, but like if I go to a place, I try to really advocate for this. If I go to some school, like in Berlin or whatever, I just did this in December. My thing as well, I'll go, I'll bring a bunch of music and I'll just treat them like they're my band. And we'll just rehearse for a day and then we'll do a concert in front of people. And I will just bring the same material that I brought to my band and be like, we're just going to try to make it work, guys. And what that means, and I usually play in it too. And I try not to like foreground myself. I try to have them do stuff. And yeah, you know, a lot of times the level is not super high, but I've had a lot of really positive experiences from that where I'm like, you know what, this is like a good set of music. They're not virtuosic killers yet, but I feel good about this as a concert to present to people. And like, that means modulating how you feel about all this stuff, like according to the context, you know? So it's not like it's not possible. It is. It's just more like, I want to play with people that are better than me. I mean, I'm trying to find people that like have certain areas of knowledge that I don't have. I mean, we have some overlapping. Usually I try to find, you know, there's some overlapping skill sets, but if people have other skill sets that I don't have at all, that's,
yeah. I mean, obviously, when you get to a certain level of virtuosity, there's different types, and it can be apples and oranges to an extent, you know, some of it, and stuff. But you were like, now I'm just getting like asking about very specific things that that you happen to have mentioned, but just because it's like I like wish that I had asked more at the time because we were emailing. But in that email, this is 2 years ago already. When you wrote me and we were chatting about that practice and hierarchy video, we were chatting about Sloterdijk and stuff. You brought up this writer Byung-Chul Han.
Oh yeah, totally, yeah.
Is Byung-Chul Han relevant to what we're talking about at all, or did you happen to like? Because I remember you brought them up, like in the.
Yeah, I've read a couple of his things. I mean, the book that I think really he got some kind of mainstream success from this book called I don't know the German name because I think he wrote it in German, but I think it's called the Transparency Society, and it has to do more with like some of the stuff we were talking about earlier about internet culture and like surveillance state and like the idea of people living in this, he calls it an excess of positivity that's actually suffocating, you know? He's really kind of like a feel bad philosopher, you know, like you're just like, okay, so the world is awful, you know, thanks.
Okay. That because we weren't talking about AI or anything like that. No, I think maybe you probably brought it up, the violence of positivity.
Yeah.
Or the word.
Yeah,
I think maybe you were bringing that up just in the sense of like, just how in that video about practice I was sort of saying we need to be more critical of each other and not just have it just be this big
your best life, whatever. That's not, you're not going to get good at anything like rigorous living your best life all the
like
time.
This big circle jerk. Yeah, because I've often said, like, you know, music, it's more important to me than like happiness. Like, it's actually like more important than me actually. I mean, I do get tons of happiness from it. I get joy and all those things, but it's like there's a thing that's actually more important than that is sort of let ourselves more like solemn.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think we shouldn't let ourselves be offered such a limited menu of emotional states and choices, you know, and it's hard because it's not, you have to find the other options, you know, but the idea of like liking and disliking something, that things have to be like that, I reject that. I don't think that's a very consumer way to like even look at stuff. And it doesn't even really go with our experience of like reality. Like if you're like, I go to Prospect Park really often, you know, and I sit at there's like a duck pond. They actually found an alligator there the other day, which I thought was funny, but
no shit.
Yeah, he was not doing well, but you know,
New York's wild now, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably somebody's pet or whatever, but so yeah, I go there and I'll like just watch the ducks and watch the water and stuff. And it's not like, I don't like it. That's not, you know what I mean?
Actually,
thumbs up to this. Like, it's just more of an experience that I'm just experiencing this thing, and
you're not evaluating it. Interesting. No. Okay.
That's something I wish I could really, that's one of the few things that I wished I could find a way to communicate to people more verbally about what I'm doing in music and what I think is just valuable in music, period, is that I think music would be appreciated more by people, just the act of just listening to something, I think it would be appreciated by people more if they could look at it less like, hey, do I like this or not? What's going on? Do I understand this? And more just like, I'm just going to sit and experience this for a half an hour.
Yeah.
It's going to be just something I'm just going to just let my mind wander. I don't even have to really even listen to it. I can just
that's definitely that's definitely the experimental music. I mean, if you're getting into experimental music, it has to on some level have at least a phase of that. I mean, that has to be at least some ingredient in getting to things that are new, like I suppose. I mean, but see, it's the thing. It's like that might be a very valuable way to listen, but then when you're then there's the other side of the coin, which is kicking your own ass when you're practicing, where you're like, this is good, this is bad, this is good, this is bad,
Yeah.
But that's more of like a internal, I guess, that, sort of internal quality control, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I think these things for me that come together with improvisation, I think that's why I find improvisation so valuable, is that what you're listening to is processed. You're listening to people make decisions, bounce ideas off one another, and create some kind of cohesive whole.
Yeah.
That's to me like what's fun about playing it. It's what's fun about listening to it. So I've started to think, I don't know if people realize that sometimes that's what they're listening to. That it's actually very simple. You're just listening to people kind of just juggle a ball around for a little while.
Yeah.
If they're doing it poorly, then it's a big drag. It's not fun to listen to. It sucks. And like we all know that. But if it's done well, it can be pretty compelling, I think.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, and when it sucks in a very particular way, and when it's profound in this very particular kind of way. I mean, that's the thing, like being out of New York and coming back, it's weird that I kind of like I've been realized like the scene that I miss, because I've sort of had my toe in a bunch of different scenes, and overlap as you well, you this is the same as you, and it's like the improvised music scene slash contemporary music composition, but that I'd almost would say free jazz sort of way. I kind of miss that the most, going to shows and doing it, because I have this background in free improvisation that's not my main thing, but has been a consistent thread, and I'm like, bro, I want to do that more. Like I miss like just the vibe of getting on stage, like just thinking about it existentially. I never used to think this way. I'm like, you can do anything. You don't even have to play. You could put on a Richard Nixon mask and just sit there. Like you don't like, it just doesn't. I mean, that might be jive for people, but it's like technically you just have to like be deep. For an hour. You just be deep in public. Just
you make it sound so easy, Charlie.
No, but I mean just having that as a baseline of just like I just have to be intense up there. And then from there, you're like, all right, notes, pitches, rhythms, what other people are doing. But like, it's not like an egotistical thing of like, I could do anything and it would be deep. But like, not in the sense of overconfidence, but just sort of, like just going into things with that real existential thing of time, like this is a time window of my life right now. Like this is a ritual to just be deep and create something deep there. I miss that, man. It's so crazy, dude. It's
I mean, there's one group that I've been exploring that with kind of really specifically called this group called Forever 21.
Yes, your so-called midlife crisis, man. You called it.
And what I'm really enjoying about it is that it's definitely not coming out of some generic because free improv has become a kind of generic style, to a large extent. And like, that's not what this band does at all. And when the shows that we've played, I think we've only done like 3 or 4 gigs. It's like at a DIY venue. We played at St. Vitus. We opened for Child Abuse. We opened for Puron and Cleric back in December. And it's so fun because the music, we're not trying to play. It's not like, oh, it's like my metal band with a trumpet. It's not about that. We just play, And it's really fascinating to hear the kind of decisions that Andy and Mike make in the music. They don't seem to me like they have a lot of baggage with this stuff at all. They're just enjoying playing, and it's so fun to do that. It's very fresh, you know.
Yeah. No, I was way into that. I watched the live video. I didn't actually get to check out the
Yeah, yeah.
the studio record, but I watched the live. It was opening for Lydia, right?
That was opening for Cleric and this band called Piron.
Yeah. Oh, Piron. No, that's
Yeah,
Doug is my dude.
Oh, cool.
All those dudes, my
Super
bros.
fun
I should ask him to be on the thing. I did a thing with Doug with like a chamber orchestra thing where like I rearrange. I'll send you this. It's in
Oh,
the
wow.
it's on the YouTube channel. It's like I did an arrangement of a Piron song.
Oh, wow.
With Doug on vocals.
Wow.
With like strings, winds, and brass. Yeah, it was fun. It came out well. But yeah, man. There's I feel like there's not as many comments as there usually are. We've got
Is anybody listening to this?
We've got viewers. We got 17
Okay.
we got 17 people tuning in.
Good.
But yeah, we're not getting. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, who's got some questions for us, or even just comments, you know. Do you have any gigs in New York like right when I get back? Because I just want to see some PE, man.
Oh, man, yeah. Actually, there's a really fun show happening at Pioneer Works. It's a battle of the bands, and it's Simon Haynes.
Oh yeah.
Simon has a band called Generation that's with Aaliyah Ultan on cello, Calvin Weston's playing drums, and Anthony Coleman's playing synth.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
And I have a band that's called Symphony with Elise Tessier on voice and flutes. Like, she does both of them extremely well. And Nick Joswiak playing electric bass, upright bass. He's amazing with the bow. He's insane. And Levi Lorenzo on live electronics and percussion. So it's this crazy quartet that I composed some really out there pieces for.
Oh, that sounds sick, dude.
We split a show that was really wild, and we were like, we should do a gig where we like face off and play pieces back to back. Just make a spectacle out of it, you know? So that's going to be on April 11th at Pioneer.
Oh, that's fun, dude. I'm
definitely a lot of fun.
I'm definitely going to be there. What, is someone going to win by like round of applause or like?
I think we should have a note counter. I don't really know what
a note counter.
Yeah,
like you win by playing the most notes.
I mean, it's not going to be that crass, you know. But so
it should be.
Part of it is kind of a joke, but that the battle of the bands part, like. But I don't know how the battle part's going to go. I just think having us go back and forth will be enough. And maybe we'll do one piece at the end. I mean, sometimes having everybody play together at the end is like usually pretty bad. But I think because it's kind of like thoughtful a little bit, like how we're doing this, like we're doing this on purpose. I think we might be able to craft something pretty interesting.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I'm all over it. Dude, I cannot wait to be back in this goddamn city, man.
It's gonna be cool to have you back.
It's so on, dude. I keep saying this to everyone. You're gonna be seeing me, like, you won't be able to avoid my presence. It's gonna get annoying. You're gonna hear the same jokes. It's gonna be repeat. Like, I'm everywhere.
Have you been back here a lot in the last, like, since COVID kind of relaxed?
Not really. I mean, I was just a few little recording things where I'd pop in for like a couple of days, but you know, not enough to marinate. You know, really, I could feel the difference though. If everyone under 40 jumps the turnstile, like I was like the only cat like is swiping a Metro card. You know?
Yeah, it's definitely different, and like I never had kind of rose-colored glasses about New York. I mean, it's weird because, you know, I moved here 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
Which I think would give me some gravitas to say like, yeah, like things are different or things aren't different or whatever.
You're a New Yorker. After 10 years, you're a New Yorker. Yeah.
So I don't know, but I was walking around Times Square last night coming home, and my first day job in New York was so hilarious. I was a security guard for Lucille Roberts' gym in Times Square at 8th Avenue and 40th Street. And what's funny is that was like 2 years after 9/11. And there was this whole thing about like Giuliani's turning, you know, Times Square into this Disney thing, which totally was happening. But what's weird is that when I look back on it, there was like a lot of remnants of the bad old Times Square. There was like a lot of porno stores.
Yeah.
All that stuff was kind of still happening a little bit, you know, and then pushed away. And then it really went away. And then I was walking around last night. I'm like, man, that stuff's kind of back.
Is it back, dude?
Kind
I
of,
mean,
yeah.
well,
Not,
see,
it's not. I'm not romanticizing it. It's not fun. It's like,
well, see, that's the thing. It's hard for me not to romanticize. It's like I'm like, yeah. People are like, ooh, it's gritty. I'm like, do you like getting robbed? It's a
yeah.
violent. It's a violent
I
crime.
mean,
You're not safe. Do you like it? Do you like getting hurt? It's like, no, I don't. It's like, yes, so you don't like it when it's gritty. I don't know.
yeah.
That gets into some shit because I remember Times Square. Yeah,
Mhm.
because
You grew up in New York, right?
I grew up in New York, so I mean, I remember earliest memories, my dad taking me to the huge arcade. I don't know if the Playland is still there, but like, yeah, just this huge arcade,
Wow.
arcade games, and there was this Indonesian restaurant right next to it, so
Wow.
we'd hit some Indonesian. But yeah, it was like all porn, like hookers, just openly, uh,
Yeah.
propositioning and crack vials underfoot. But yeah, right. Is it like? Well, see, yeah, this is the thing. Everyone's just like, stop gentrification. I'm like, the only way to stop gentrification is violent crime. That is the only way to do it. So, you know what I mean? People are like, we got to keep the yuppies out and keep it artists. I'm like, you got to rob them. Like, you have to literally hurt people.
What if
Like,
the
that's the only
people that
way.
are advocating for that are saying we shouldn't be gentrifying, what if they started a crime wave? That could be interesting.
Well,
Like
yeah.
a maybe like some kind of social justice like gang that's going
Well,
around.
that's kind of what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Because it's
It'd be
like you can't.
interesting.
Yeah, well, because you can't if you're like an art. Well, that's the thing. It's like if you're like an art type person, a sort of downwardly mobile ex middle class or whatever you want to call
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Rock bro or whatever. You move into these neighborhoods that are crime ridden and poor. If you don't want the yuppies to follow you, you got to team up. You got to team up with the gang people. If you can
Yeah.
somehow work your way, you know what I mean? No
Interesting.
one ever does that. That's not a thing.
You could start a
It's like
nonprofit or something like that, like some kind of interesting.
no, like it is profit. It's just snatching chains. You know what I mean? It's just like, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. This is just like ridiculous, fantastical stuff. But no, but it is kind of relevant because I am getting this like juvenile, like hard on about like gritty New York.
Yeah,
But I'm like, we used to get jacked
yeah,
sometimes as kids. In
yeah.
seventh and eighth grade, we would get jacked. Giuliani came in, we stopped getting jacked. It's like
Mhm.
that
Is that clear?
it's like that's kind of how it
I don't really
happens.
know a lot
So
of
I don't,
people that are getting straight up robbed, but it's more like most other places you go to in the US where there's just a lot of people that are just really struggling. I mean,
yeah.
that's just what it is. And it's actually not as bad here as it is in other places. I don't know what LA is like now, but I
It's
mean,
heartbreaking, dude.
when I was there in
Heartbreaking.
October, it's
Yeah.
like, and I always noticed that, and like I remember I was with my wife's family in Seattle at kind of the height of COVID, and it was like super Mad Max vibes, like in downtown Seattle.
Dude.
you
Yeah, yeah,
know
yeah.
so
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
not good. It's not fun. It's not like those people are not part of some countercultural thing living in lofts making records. They're like
No.
super struggling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
No, it's dark. And yeah, and I mean that's if like the spirit of in the air changes, it seems
yeah,
like people who are right on the edge of like
yeah.
are they going to randomly attack someone? They're like, "Yes, I am." It's just like it's teetering like I don't know, like I just like I saw the little bit that I've been in New York, I saw not some horrific violence, but like several like people about to fight,
Mhm.
scuffles, nothing
Yeah,
traumatizing, but just like tough guy stuff
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
you didn't used to see. I didn't used to spend 2 days in New York and you
And see
see
that all the
people
time.
like throwing hands on a subway platform. So it
Yeah.
seems like there's like a tilting, like the COVID thing. It just made the spirit a little wilder and like darker, and it's just like sets over. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it came at already kind of not a great time. I remember right before COVID came. There's a friend of mine, this guy Yuri Pukul, who's a tenor saxophone player from Slovenia, and he started this like a jazz workshop in the town that he grew up in called Velenje, and it's like I think an old mining town that now has it's small, super small, has a little jazz club and a tiny school. And like there was this one day where one of the teachers couldn't make it yet from some other country, so he asked me to go and just sit with these kids for like a little bit, and they were all singers. It was like it was like 12 singers.
Yeah.
And I was like, guys, I don't really don't know anything about singing, but we talk about music and stuff. And yeah, for some reason, it wasn't like I sprung this on them or anything, but I was sort of like, how are you? So this is like February of 2020, or January or something like that. Like it's
Yeah.
not about COVID, it's just about the world. And I was like, are you guys excited about the future, just like in general? And they were like, no. And they were from all different countries. From all different countries.
Just flat, immediate
They were
response.
like, no, we're horrified. We don't know what to think, you know? And it's like, so if that's any kind of like just an informal poll of some people from various Eastern and Western European countries that are like 19 years old, it's like, man, that's not, and these are kids that are doing okay. I mean, they're at a jazz camp,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
It's just weird. It's just a weird thing. And so I especially just like, yeah, talking to young people, like in these, I try not to talk about that stuff too much because it's like, you know what? Yeah, the world is scary and all that stuff. We're inundated with all this, you know, crazy shit all the time. At least we can spend 2 hours talking about Coltrane and playing some music and just try to have a good experience. You know, they can't do it us yet. You know, we can still have that actually.
No, there's life, man. It's like you know, and people have it's like, dude, Quartet for the End of Time, literally in a concentration camp. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can, you know, if you can deal with that, you can deal with someone like canceling you on Facebook. I mean, right? I mean, it's like, you can write your music with whatever. Not that that's the worst thing that's happening. You know, can you write that with COVID? Can you write it with people dying around you of COVID? Yeah, but let's okay, so we don't have to take questions from the comments, but you might want to and we've got folks we've got folks asking. Bray Grimes is asking about specific trumpeter questions. That's what I'm saying. You were like kind of like on some like fuck the trumpet vibes, but you know, inquiring minds want to know.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you talk about how you approach the sonic difference between the piccolo trumpet and the B flat trumpet?
Yeah. So the piccolo trumpet for people, because people always ask me, like, you know, it's funny. Like, I think that first Forever 21 gig at Vitus, Dominica, like one of her friends just saw me holding it and was like, just started laughing. Like, what the hell is that, man? Looks like a toy.
Dude, I'm sorry. It is funny. I mean, it looks like, it's not funny to me because I like literally listen to Monteverdi in my spare time because I'm a dork. You know what I mean? So it's like but like just see, I know people think, people don't know. People don't know. It's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it makes it. I you know, honestly, I never really thought about it that much, like the visual component of it, like until recently. I just wasn't, probably for the best. I wasn't trying to make a shtick or anything. It's like I think it's a really cool instrument, but so like when people started to try to figure out how to play Bach and Telemann and Vivaldi, when like after modern trumpets were kind of developed with the valve system and all that, I mean, there used to be like in different keys and stuff. At a certain point, they were like, we don't know how people played these high parts, like the Brandenburg Concerto, cantatas. It didn't make any sense, like how it was possible. So they built these trumpets called the piccolo trumpets, which are like basically an octave above the normal trumpets, like half the tubing. And it's super high. It just starts high. Like it starts at the B flat, like in the staff, you know?
Yeah.
And so then that created a culture of people playing that music on the piccolo trumpet. And so then you had people like this guy, Pierre Thibault, a lot of the French really excelled at this stuff. So a lot of the small trumpet solo tradition really comes from France. So you had this guy, Pierre Thibault, and then the big soloist was this guy, Maurice André. He was like the big trumpet star for the 20th century. Right. And his thing, he really excelled on the small trumpet. So he would make these albums of Albinoni, like oboe concertos, all the Bach stuff, Telemann. They would just dig up whatever literature from the Baroque era. Most of it wasn't really that great, but he always sounded great. He was like a big star.
I love how that stuff sounds, man. It's such a cool instrument. Yeah.
It's amazing. He has a big vibrato and it's really trumpety and it's like, wow. And so that was kind of the model for how people played. And so then I guess it must have been like the 60s and 70s, like the historical instrument movement kind of got underway. And you had people start to figure out, okay, like Baroque trumpets were a thing. What if we actually figure out how to play them? And so then there was these generations of people that got better and better and better until, I think, if you ask me now, the piccolo trumpet, which was invented to play that stuff, is almost antiquated in some weird way because the Baroque trumpet, the level of playing has gotten extremely high.
Oh, okay. It's okay.
When you hear a Baroque trumpet playing the Brandenburg Concerto, for instance, which is the solo group is violin, oboe, flute, and trumpet. When you hear the Baroque trumpet blending in the 4-part counterpoint, it's like, oh, hell yeah, this sounds way better than like the super shrill, loud, because it's not a trumpet concerto, it's a quadruple concerto, you know, that particular piece. So anyway, so like when I was in conservatory, you know, it's just normal that at a certain point, it's like, you got to figure out how to play some piccolo trumpet. It's just a normal part of your professional life, through wedding things or just doubling basically. So I was able to get one. And then I started practicing that Baroque stuff, like at school. And I just immediately thought, like, I mean, I just don't like a lot of trumpet music all that much. It's just not that good music. Like one of our biggest pieces is like the Hummel concerto. It's like this, not that great piece.
I don't even know Hummel. Yeah, I don't even.
Yeah, whatever.
Like, is he like a D-list Baroque guy or something? Or
pretty much, yeah. So when I started to play the piccolo in the Baroque context, I was like, I don't want it to sound like a trumpet. I want it to sound like a clarinet, or like something really delicate and really soft and really like agile. And so at that same time, I was like, yeah, but you know, it'd be really cool if I could improvise on this thing too, because nobody does that. And I just started doing that. And then eventually, again, like all the stuff started to kind of converge, and I just kept pursuing I mean, the cool thing about playing an instrument like this and trying to develop something on it is that there's no templates for it. There's not like a huge tradition weighing on me of like, this is how you're supposed to improvise on the piccolo trumpet. There's a few people, there's some interesting examples of people that have done it in the past, but yeah, so I sort of just started moving in that direction. Like I always like the idea, like the post kind of Coltrane idea of having the two different voices, like the two different like sides of yourself that are.
I was gonna say, you mean even within your piccolo trumpet, I'm hearing that clarinet-y, not shrill, agile thing, and then I hear you go into piercing stuff.
Sure, yeah.
Sometimes is that what you're talking about? Like two different?
I mean, actually, between the big trumpet and the piccolo trumpet.
Sorry. Okay,
developing two kind of really different identities.
Okay.
That overlap. You know, of course, I can do a lot of the noisy stuff on piccolo, and it's actually better in some ways to do that than the big trumpet. But yeah, so I just kind of kept pursuing that until eventually, like, and I actually there was a really fun gig that I missed doing, which was, you know, this venue called Barge Music in Dumbo. Super like just old school classical music venue on a boat, like a dry docked boat. It's all wood, you know, like a lot of tuxedos and stuff. And they would used to do this program on New Year's Eve where they would do all the Brandenburg concertos. And the trumpet players, people would do it for a couple of years and like, I don't want to do this anymore, because it's not only hard, but people know that it's hard, and people kind of want to see you fail a little bit when you play a piece like that. So
are the Brandenburg concertos really difficult to play?
The trumpet part, there's only one with trumpet, and that trumpet part is like notoriously difficult.
Yeah. I know the one you're talking about. I love the Brandenburg concertos.
It's amazing. Yeah. So I got that gig from a previous guy that just didn't want to do it anymore. And I did that every year for like 7 or 8 years on New Year's Eve. It was really, really fun. I kept my chops up to do that kind of stuff on the piccolo, but it wasn't that different from my improvising, actually. Like how I played Brandenburg, I used the same style almost, you know, just try to play quiet, try not to have it be super punchy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just don't, you know, there's not as many calls for those kinds of gigs. Or if there are, other people do them. I have other stuff to do. So I'm just kind of mostly improvising or doing my own music on piccolo trumpet. And sometimes I'll even bring it. Like I did a tour in the fall, just last fall, like with some German musicians. This drummer named Ollie Steidl. There's like trumpet, bass clarinet, and I just only brought the piccolo in that context, and it was really super fun. So yeah, so it kind of just developed its own thing in that way, you know.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, he's also asking how does that transfer to composition, like the piece for flutes? I don't know. Is there something fluty about I don't know.
Not really. I mean, I did some of the stuff I did for like the piccolo piece, the piccolo flute piece. I did like improvise some sections on within certain like harmonic cycles on the bigger trumpet, super slow, and then would speed them up to hear what they would sound like if it was on a piccolo. You know, to be like, would this even be a thing? And I did that a little bit, and it helped me kind of start the process, you know, composing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Dude, you know what I think? You know what I think looks badass, like funny in a badass way, holding the piccolo trumpet? It's like it looks like you own this. It's like owning the trumpet so much that it's like small. Like, you know what I mean? It's like it makes you look big. You know, like fucking, like just like what is this? Like what is this?
I'm a giant.
Yeah, like you're a giant. Like just, you know, like you're gonna play it and like throw it in the trash or something. You know. So yeah, I think it's got. I think it's got like Chad. I think I think it's got Chad energy, man.
What does that mean? This is some internet lingo I don't know.
Oh, just like a macho, like a real man, you know, like this,
Oh,
like, you know,
interesting. Playing the
it's like,
piccolo trumpet has the macho energy because it makes me look like
well,
a giant.
well, I'm realizing that it, like, I realized just now that it does, because I'm like, why is this funny? Why is this funny but also badass? Like, what is? And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, because it's like, yeah, when you're playing it, it looks like, I mean, especially in that hyper aggro
Yeah, yeah.
context, you know, and it just sounds so aggressive and just sounds like insane, like feedback and noise.
Yeah.
But like people don't even know what this thing is.
I don't
They're
even know what it is.
like, does he just dominate this thing so much that it like shrinks in his hands to just be this like toy, you know?
It would be cool if it was even smaller. I'll work on that. Maybe
It's,
get even smaller.
it's like, man, that cat's got the smallest trumpet in the game, baby. You can't even
Yeah, yeah,
see
yeah.
it.
Well, I really love this musician Ko Ishikawa who plays the show, the mouth organ in Japan, and because it's like it's a bamboo mouth organ that has to be like at the right, I guess, humidity or temperature for it to even like work and be in tune. He's constantly like managing it and like making and like rubbing it and making sure that it's like okay.
It's like the most Japanese thing ever.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
it's
amazing.
just like,
And then, I mean, it's a really traditional instrument. I think it's from the Gagaku Orchestra. He actually plays in one of those orchestras in Japan.
that's so
That's like
cool.
his day job.
That's so
And
sick.
and watching him play, it's like he's like cupping it around his mouth, and then and all that's sticking up is the reeds, you know. But the actual mechanism, you can't really see it. It's like he's like blowing into this box.
Right, right. It's like this secret, like this tiny
It's a
little
secret.
world that he has
Yeah,
this like humid, temperature controlled
yeah.
environment in
It's
his
an amazing
hands.
instrument. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so sick. Yeah, man. Well, you know what? I think
Are we good?
we're, yeah, dude. What one more short one or what? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm always like, you know what? The nice thing about getting older and just more like comfortable and being crusty is like now I'll just be like, no, I don't want to
No.
do it. We're not doing that. You know why? Because then we're like, well, why? Come on. It's like it's gonna be bad.
Yeah.
Just say it.
When have you done one more short one and it's just like
The best thing.
you just land at like a Webern,
Oh,
like
guys.
you know, like Opus 18 or something.
Even wanting more. I mean, come on. There's got to be some show business in this. If you're gonna make weird music, you got to have the showbiz thing at least somewhat in your mind. Like you can't leave people wanting less.
Yeah. Yes.
That's not okay.
No, I
And I've been
know.
guilty of that. Sometimes I've, maybe miscalculated or whatever, but definitely it's better to do less.
Yeah, for real, for real. I mean, I don't even watch, even when I go to see like a group that I'm so psyched about, I don't even watch the opening acts. Because I don't want to I don't want to watch 3 hours of music. I know this sucks to say, people don't want to hear this. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't even want to see. Some people do though, you know, fanatical fan, you know, but it's like, I just like, I get burnt out. Like, I just want to see what I want to see. Cause like, I don't
I
know.
mean, when I play shows, I don't, there's a lot of times I won't, if I'm playing a show and there's an opening act, I very often won't see it. And it's because if it's good, that might tug me in a way that I don't want to be tugged. And if it's bad, it's going to just put me in a really bad mood, I think. Yes, it's happened to me when if I see an opening set, I mean, I don't know how comedians deal with this kind of thing because it's like, must be really hard, to like.
Well, I mean, in that case, you've got, if someone does some of the same material, if someone already does Airplane Food, like you can't even go up and do Airplane Food.
No.
You gotta switch it up, So but but yeah, man.
Well, great.
Dude, thank you so much.
Super fun, man. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Dude, I loved it, man. I knew it was going to be great, but I mean, it was top, couldn't have been better, Peter.
Thanks, Charlie.
Yeah, man.
Soon, I guess.
I mean, I bet you the next time I'll see you will probably be at that Pioneer Works
Amazing.
Because I am for sure going to be there.
Great.
And and you'll meet Kirsten probably. She'll probably come.
Awesome.
So yeah, dog.
Thanks, Charlie. It's great.
Yeah, be well till then.
Yeah.
All right.
Have a good night. Yeah.
Peace, bro. You too.
Peace. Yep.
There it is, guys. Peter Evans. You can't fuck with that. It's Peter Evans, man. Yeah, so I mean, final words is just subscribe to the Patreon, really, the link is gonna be in the comments below. I'll add it the second the broadcast is over. But yeah, you get special stuff, you get special guitar instructional videos, music history type stuff and overview things. The live stream and the podcast will always be free. That's going to continue to be free. Although I might start paywalling stuff if I get like mad famous people on here, just because like But no, it's going to remain free. Yeah, sign on up. And let's see. I won't announce the next week. I like to announce the stuff during the week, the next guest. But yeah, we're gonna have some familiar faces soon. All right, stay tuned, everyone. Bye bye.